introduce myself and Brian, I just wanted to share a disclaimer that we are not doing any illegal activities in here. It's just educational content, and we are not advertising breaking and entering or anything illegal here. So I just wanted to introduce you to physical pen testing and to Brian and to what Covert Access Team is. And now I just wanted to quickly say who I am. So my name is Dorota. This is my stream, and I'm a penetration tester, and I'm called Wonder Woman of Cyber. That's why the red cape. So let's get back to the stream. I wanted to introduce you guys to Brian, and this is Brian, and he's the creator of the Covert Access Team, and he's also a professional with 15 years of expertise in cyber and physical penetration testing. Yeah, he has a lot of skill. I want to ask you if you could introduce yourself in your own words.
So I've been doing this for a really long time. I had a really like many people who do this, I had a really long winding path. I started off in mathematics and physics, and had a very intelligent professor who told me that if I don't go get a PhD, I will have no job in mathematics and physics. I had no interest in getting a PhD at the time, so I went on to do cyber computer science. I started doing working for research for the government on some really fun projects. Really hard though. If anybody's programmed in functional programming languages, you probably understand the pain of really intense deadline programming. I got to work with some very intelligent people in the government who run cyber and physical pen testing. That's how I got into it. And yeah, I've been doing this now for, depending on how you look at it, I've been doing this now for somewhere between around 18 years. So a long time. And yeah, so I'm excited to be here and talk to you. And yeah, so we'll be spending the next few hours together. And then next week, we're going to be breaking into buildings. So that'll be fun.
Okay, so I prepared some questions, but I also encouraging everyone, if you have any questions, then please write them in the chat. I took 2 of your courses, and I'm a satisfied customer per se. So just wanted to, and I already know that you are a good teacher and a very good storyteller. So just wanted to ask if you could share us, your story. And how did you become the person you are today? You already said some of it, but
Yes.
maybe there's like some secrets that you didn't disclose before.
Oh, well, there's there's lots of secrets, of course, but it's fairly benign. It's mostly just time. Physical pen testing is a very niche thing, and there's not a lot of people who do it. I was like I said, I was very lucky that I got to work very early on in my career when I was like 20, which, by the way, I'm going to turn 40 this year. So I've been doing it a long time. But many years ago, I got to work with some guys who were, and girls, who were very, very good at what they did, both in the cyber realm, the research realm, and the physical realm. And I got to kind of experience all of that, right off the bat. I got a big taste for both the cyber and the physical. And then I started my own company. I do a lot of freelance work, but then I jump into what I consider real jobs, 9 to 5 punch card kind of thing, every once in a while, because I tend to travel all over the world doing this type of work. And as an American, I'm currently in Denmark, soon to leave. Traveling constantly gets old after a while. So every once in a while, I'll jump into a real role, get a visa, and stick around for more than 90 days. But yeah, so, and on top of that, I mean, I've had lofty titles. Like when I was at NCC, I was the team lead for the Nordic region for offensive security. You have these very lofty titles, and I feel very blessed to have been, put in those positions to manage teams and all of that. But yeah, it's fun bouncing between the cyber end of things, the physical end of things. But I will say, for everybody on your stream, and yourself included, my heart goes out to you guys, because I have never known a skill set that diminishes faster than cybersecurity. It is, you can be a wonderful cook, and then you go 6 months without baking or cooking or anything, and you still have, fairly good, you're still good at it, right? But man, if you take 5-6 months off of cyber pen testing, the amount of tools, the amount of CVEs, the amount of, exploits, the amount of things that come out. You're like, I'm sorry, what is that tool, and what does it do, and what is it? Like, you just have no idea what the hell's going on. So it's the skill set just depreciates so fast, and it's rough. So my heart goes out to you guys who are constantly trying to stay on top of things, because it's not easy.
Yeah, I can say something about that because after I took the ICP exam in January, I felt so burnt out. So I didn't touch Mekali like till May this year. So a few months, and I had a job interview yesterday, and they said, yeah, you just need to practice. So everything that you just said is exactly true.
Yep. It is really rough. I've been doing this a long time, and I will take 4 or 5 months off to go do physical engagements or auditing, or teaching courses or whatever. You come back, and I remember when the tool Nuclei came out, and if you're familiar with it, it's a command line tool for pen testing, and I had never seen it before. And people were one of my colleagues was using it. I was like, what is that? And they were like, oh, it's this new thing to check for this type of stuff. And I was like, that's amazing. And that happens all the time. And it's like, and people who are staying on top of it, you're just like, well, yeah, of course. How did you not know about this? This came out 5 hours ago. And it's like, because I wasn't doing this for the last 5 months.
Yeah, that's experience.
Yep.
So I have a next question, and then okay. So before I ask a question, I just wanted to introduce everyone to Covert Access Team. Uh, yeah, you just this I will share the link in the chat so everyone can go there, see how amazing it is. Just wanted to introduce you guys to the trainings that are there. So we go here, courses. There are courses, they are amazing. So there's like Covert Access training for 5 days. I'm going there to Copenhagen to have it next week. And I'm super excited and proud of it. Physical audit certification, so I already had it. And it's also really good. Want to ask more questions about it later.
Sure.
Elicitation toolbox course 2 days. Counter elicitation techniques training course 2 days. That's something new that I want to learn more about.
Sure.
And then there's the cyber bot camp for black teams and private instruction. So to go more into details, the elicitation toolbox course is you just learn elicitation, building rapport, non-verbal cues, like learning about the body language, and yeah.
Yeah, so all of these courses are just geared towards physical penetration testers. So with the elicitation stuff, it's all about how do you build rapport with people? How do you, if you've broken into a building and I ask you, okay, so you've broken into the building. Let's say it's daylight hours. The building is occupied, bunch of employees. Who do you choose to walk up and start trying to build rapport with? How do you do it? How do you recognize? How do you make that icebreaker? How do you get out of the situation if things go wrong while you're doing embedded recon? So you broke before you even break into the building, right? There's various forms of recon. So when you're doing embedded recon and you're inside the building under false or real pretext, maybe it's a bank, and you go in saying, I'd like to open up a bank account, right? That's a real thing. You can do that. And maybe that's how you're scouting and seeing alarms and cameras and employee badges and other things. But it's also an excellent time to build rapport and make a friend, get information from people. How do you do that? How do you go about that? How do you successfully elicit information, which is basically pulling specific useful information out of somebody without them realizing that you do it. And every one of your listeners, I guarantee you, is going to realize that on the internet, at least, the best way to get information is not to ask a question on Reddit. It's to ask a question and then sign in as another account and give a wrong answer. And then within 5 minutes, you're going to have a cavalcade of people telling you that guy's an idiot. This is how you really do it. And it's just human nature. It's learning how to do that, how to exploit it, how to get people to tell you things without them without you having to ask questions effectively. And but yeah, and then I actually created the counter elicitation course because I had an entire board that asked to do this one course because they thought it would be very useful for being managers and other things, which it is. And humorously, when you're doing the elicitation course, I usually have little sparring sessions with the students. I make them try to elicit information from one another and figure out what the opponent is trying to get out of you. And they all basically realized we suck at this, and we are all just we are open books to everybody, and that's really bad. That we can just, if somebody asks us a question or uses any of these techniques, we'll just blab stuff we really shouldn't. So that's why I created the counter elicitation course, is basically just to try and figure out techniques on how to stop that, how to not do those types of things. But yeah, so, and then the of course the covert access thing, the 5 days of learning how to break into buildings, and then it culminates with I partner with organizations all over the world. We will go to a facility where we learn how to break into buildings, how to plan it out, techniques, methods, etc. Some social engineering, and then on the final day, you have to actually do it. So the whole point of partnering with these businesses, and they're real businesses. They're not like, oh, this is like, Bob's, cafe or something. These are live offices. And you will have to break into the building. I will act as the client and give you real flags. I need you to bug the boardroom. I need you to elicit this information from the employees. I need you to locate this server and plant a bug, or these types of things that you would really do in a real engagement. And you actually have to do them. And in order to graduate and get a certificate, you have to actually go through and do all these kinds of things. And you have to document it. Although I'm not going to make you write a report, because that sucks.
Okay, so when you were talking, I shared the slides of every training that you have.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And because, yeah, I think when I found your page, I was like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. I'm in love, and like I want to do those trainings. It's my dream. So yeah, you can see like the level of excitement is high here. And so I want to ask about yeah, Covert Access Team. How did you came up with that idea to create the business and like to teach?
Yeah, so I've actually been teaching and running this as a freelancer for a long time. But usually the way that for me at least, the way that it has gone in the past is, before I started the business, was I would just do it as a freelance, right? I would just say, you can hire me on LinkedIn as a freelancer. And I would come in and do all the same things. And sometimes I would get companies or organizations, police, firefighters, corporate, whatever, who would ask how to do these things. And then I'd go teach them. And then I had some people, some former FBI guys who talked to me, and they were like, dude, you should just make a company, because they were very much in your boat, where they were like, we want to do this, but we don't know how to get in touch with you or anything else. So I stopped being an idiot, and I just created a website and started the business, and was like, all right, here's how you can get in touch with me, and here's how you can run this. But yeah, so it's been good. I will say that, especially for people in Europe, it has been increasingly busy for me and the people I know who do this, because you have a lot of compliance rules and laws from Brussels that are rolling down the pipe, that kick in either January of this year or October of this year. They basically say, if you are in certain industries like critical infrastructure, and whatever the hell critical infrastructure adjacent means, nobody knows what that means. It's like, I use the roads, I use electricity. Does that mean I'm adjacent to critical infrastructure? But you have to increase your physical security testing in the same way that you have to increase your cybersecurity testing, which means pen testing and auditing and everything else. So there's a huge demand for it right now. And if anybody is looking to get into that field, I would highly encourage you, like, now is the time. Now is a very good time, because not a lot of people in Europe do it. And Europe is passing laws that basically say organizations and companies have to. So it's a prime time.
When you were talking, I came up with a few questions
Sure.
because you said Europe. So which countries are the most like interested in your
It's not countries per se. Currently, I'm in Denmark, but over the last 2 or 3 months, I have been in France, Denmark, Germany several times, Croatia, Lithuania. I know I'm forgetting one, but I've been all over the place, and basically I kind of do several things. I give a lot of talks, I do a lot of audits, I do a lot of pen tests, I teach a lot of courses, but then also I am kind of like a lot of pen testing groups end up hiring me So in the same way that you might hire a freelancer, this is what I used to do all the time, where they would be like, hey, we're running a Tiber or a red team or a physical or a pen test. For any non-Europeans, by the way, a Tiber is basically just a red team with your hands tied behind your back, where you say like, well, it's a red team, but you can't do this and you can only do that. And you can only, that's that. And so you'll have pen test groups who do these or engagements, and they're like, oh, could you come in while we're running this cyber-based engagement and break into this facility and plant a bug here or get a man-in-the-middle device here so we can get on this internal network and do this thing? And it's like, yeah, sure, I can absolutely give that a shot. So I do that all the time. And it's funny when it happens, because it's always like this last-minute thing where you'll get a call up and it's like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing next week? And it's funny when that happens, but it happens a lot. So
You didn't mention Poland there. The next question was, because am I like the first student from Poland to go and use your classes?
No. You're not the first from Poland, actually. I can think off the top of my head, I can think of 4 different people in Poland who've taken various courses. Actually, no, 5. But it is 5 people, including yourself, from Poland, and Poland's a big place. So it's, when you realize, like, if I asked how many hackers, do you think are in Poland, you'd probably be hundreds, right? Maybe thousands. Yeah. But how many people are really good at running a physical engagement? And it's not many, at least on the civilian side. Certain governments and organizations, they'll have their own internal stuff. Like I know the Department of Defense in the United States, they have their own red team. They have the Department of Energy and the NEST teams. They run their own stuff when they're doing basically pen tests on nuclear reactors and things like it. But so aside from governments, there are very few organizations within countries that do a really good job. And we can talk about that if you want, but there is a big difference between running a pen test and running a good pen test when it comes to physical. And by the way, the latter is how you will get a lot of work. If you set yourself apart, you're like, no, I don't just have a flipper and I tailgate, but here's all the things that I can do, and here's all the things that I did for you. If you can do that and really set yourself apart, you will get. I can't make any guarantees here, but you will set yourself apart, and chances are you will get repeated business.
My question is, because I'm a female, but I'm really interested in like getting a job in physical pen testing.
Sure.
But do you have any pointers for me to stand out? And like because of my gender, I think companies might be a bit suspicious and like not really. I'm just like this cute person, so it doesn't really feel like I'm good at this. So do you have any pointers here?
Okay. So in my experience, women are usually better at physical pen testing than men. It doesn't matter what country you go to. If a guy is outside your building at 2 a.m. alone, he is suspicious. And if it's 2 guys outside your building at 2 a.m, they are clearly up to no good, right? It's just a universal law. But if a guy and a woman are outside your building at 2 a.m, they're on a date. Right? If it's just a woman outside your building at 2 a.m, oh, she's out for a walk. Like we have this idea that we tend to assign innocence to females and guilt or suspicion to guys. And as a result, especially when it comes to social engineers, I mean, so female social engineers are like the ninjas of social engineering, because they can do stuff that just, as a guy, I'll give you a perfect example of this, or maybe an example. I don't know if it's perfect, but there was an instance, I think 6 or 7 years ago, where we are trying to tailgate, me and a female colleague are trying to tailgate into a building. All the employees are leaving at lunchtime through a back entrance. They go to a strip mall to get food, and then they come back out. And one of the methods that we attempt to, go in is we're going to just tailgate when all the employees fumble back in through the door. And there's an armed guard at the back entrance. So what I do is I have my hands full of stuff, food and drinks and all this kind of stuff, because I don't have a badge, right? I don't have a badge that I can swipe. So I'm hoping that, an employee or somebody will feel pity on the guy who's bringing food for whoever, and they'll just hold the door open, right? That's the plan. I time it a little off, and the door closes before I get there. And the guard is just sitting there like this, right? He's just kind of staring at me suspiciously, and I'm acting awkward. Oh no, I can't find my my badge and I have all this food and drink, and I start to get kind of desperate. And so I take one of the sodas and like spill it on myself to look extra pathetic. And he's still just standing there like this, like, no. And I go, oh no, I must have left my badge back in the restaurant, right? So I turn on my heel and I walk back. That's my escape clause. Like, okay, if this goes wrong, that's how I'm going to get out of this. My female colleague is approaching as I'm walking away in shame. And before she looks in her purse, carrying nothing, she looks in her purse and the guard opens the door. I was just like, so it is funny. Like I will say that you will likely have, at least on manipulation side of things, you will likely have a much easier time than say I would. And companies tend to look at that. If they know what they're doing, if they're a mature penetration testing company, they will probably be jumping at the chance to have a female who is on the team, especially a female who also knows how to do some cyber pen testing. Because what that means is like then you can also help on the cyber end of things, because once you get into the building, you have to actually do stuff. And you have to like know, oh, here's where the server is, and here's how I open it, and here's how I plant a man in the middle device. Or if the man in the middle device is not working, how do I fix it? So having those skill sets is very valuable.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, and if I would work in Paris, then I could wear a red dress and like distract everyone, and then
Sure.
the other person can do the magic there. And also, I wanted to mention that I have something in my way of being that people trust me. So with just like approaching someone, it could be also helpful, and maybe also being Polish could help me because there's like a lot of staff that is cleaning the buildings, and they're like from my country, so I could
Sure.
even like pretend to be like a new employee, and okay,
I
a lot of ideas there.
No, you're absolutely right, and you're on the right mindset. I had a female colleague of mine doing a pen test once, who she was able to, because she spoke Turkish, and the janitorial staff were Turkish. She struck up a conversation with them, and they let her in the building. And I mean, it's funny, right? Because it's like you build rapport with them, like you have that commonality. And as I tell people who are just getting into pen testing, when you try to break into buildings, one of the first questions you're going to have to ask yourself is, do you want to fight the men or do you want to fight the machines? If you break in during the day, you're fighting people, social engineering, all that kind of stuff. If you break in at night, you're fighting the machines, the alarms, the sensors, the cameras, that. But there is a middle ground where you can kind of do both, and you do it on easy mode. And that is if you discover through your reconnaissance that they have after hours cleaning staff. Because the first thing that the cleaning staff will do when they enter a building is turn off all the alarms. And if you think about it, they have to, right? So the cleaning staff shows up at say 6, 7 o'clock at night. They open the door, they turn on the lights, and the first thing they have to do is turn off all the alarms because they have to move through the building without setting anything off. So if you time your break-in when they show up, you think about it, and it's like, well, the cleaning staff are the least paid. They're usually not employees of the company. They're usually like third parties, like the company has hired some third party to do cleaning. So they don't really know who's a legitimate employee. Like if you've ever worked in offices before, you had a cleaning staff. And if I asked you, name 3 of them, chances are you can't. And they can't name you. And so there's this disconnect between who's a real employee, who's the janitor, et cetera. And if you time your break-in for when the janitors come in, say the front entrance, and you come in through the rear entrance, and you're wearing an outfit or maybe even an ID badge that looks very similar to a real employee, well, to them, you're just an overworked, poor soul who's there after hours on a deadline, right? And suddenly you have free reign over the entire place, and as long as you can not look too suspicious in front of the cleaning staff, you're good. And it's so, yeah, but these are just little tricks and things that you can do to maximize your probability of success.
Okay, so my next question is a bit connected to what you just said. So who is the weakest link, and how do you assess that?
So do you mean like with like the employees when you say weakest link?
Yeah, like when you
Yeah.
enter a building. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the weakest link, in my opinion, is one of 2 people. It is definitely going to be the third party services, cleaning, cooking, janitors, maintenance, people who do not know who the legitimate people are, and ideally people who show up after hours. That is always going to be the weakest link, because think of the janitorial staff. They are paid next to nothing. They are probably, as you pointed out, foreigners. So they don't really, they're not locals. So they probably don't know all the local customs. They are paid very little. All they want to do is show up at 7 o'clock at night, clean the toilets, scrub the floors, get out, go home. It sucks, right? If anybody who's ever scrub the floors, it sucks. It's a horrible job. And so if you show up, let me say it this way. This is an example that I use all the time. If you were inside of a building, let's say you worked at a major international company, and the CEO of the company bumps into you in the hallway, and he says, "Hey, I'm on my way to go get a coffee, and you look like you're working really hard. Could I get you one and bring it back to you?" Well, you think about it and you're like, well, okay, the CEO, his level of importance to the company and his level of pay is like way up here and mine is way down here, right? There's no reason that he has to do this. He doesn't have to be nice to me. He's the CEO. I'm just some programmer or whatever. Well, but your rapport with him, you probably think really highly of him, because like, oh man, that guy just bumped into me and he has no reason to be nice to me, but man, he just went and got me a coffee for no reason. Well, that difference in pay grade and company importance and everything else is about the same from you to the CEO as you to the janitor. And so the janitor is usually not going to question you. They're not going to like accost you and be like, hey, I don't know you. Like, show me an ID badge, right? That's usually not going to happen. So oftentimes they are going to be the weakest link, the janitors, the third-party services. But as far as the company is concerned, the weakest link is the employees, any employee. And this is what I mean by that. Have you ever heard of Operation Snow White?
No, I had to Google that.
Okay, so I'm going to say the word allegedly a lot because this organization tends to be very litigious and I don't want to get sued.
Okay.
So allegedly, there was a group in the United States that wanted to get tax exempt status. And in the United States, if the federal government recognizes you as a religion, you pay no taxes. So every dollar you make, no tax for you. That's a really good thing to have, right? And this particular organization, allegedly, wanted to have tax exempt status, and the government said, you're not a religion, go away. So what they did was they allegedly launched Operation Snow White, where they had several hundred, I believe 100 of their members get real jobs, actual employment at the IRS, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the DMV, like everywhere. And they started pilfering information back to the organization. And as the story goes, even the FBI agent who was in charge of investigating this particular group, allegedly, was one of their members. And so every time they would have a meeting about the organization, she would bug the office. And so they knew everything, right? They had dirt on politicians, on organizations, everybody. And when the time came that the organization came back to the government and said, hey, we would like to reapply for tax exempt status. And allegedly, we have all these documents that you don't want going public. And we don't really know what happened to that meeting, but we do know that they got tax exempt status. So one question that always comes up is, how do you prevent that type of thing from happening as an organization, insider threats? How do you stop somebody who is malicious from just getting a job, like a legitimate job, right? If you get, and governments all over the world have this problem all the time, like especially with like the CCP in China, where they have something called, I think it's like the 1,000 or the 100-year talent program or 1,000-year talent program or something. And the shtick goes, they take very bright young Chinese students and they pay for them to go to Berkeley or Harvard or Yale or Cambridge or wherever. And then they do very well in those schools, and then they go get jobs at like Dell or Microsoft or Apple or wherever. And then they just pilfer information back to their government. And if you're the employer and you say, wow, you went to Harvard, you have a clean criminal record, we gave you all of these teasers and challenges on your interviews, and you aced them all, and you seem like a really great person, how do you know if they're a plant, if they're a threat, right? That's really hard to know. So from the company's perspective, the biggest threat is going to be your own employees, because you never know who's actually malicious, who's stupid and clicks on those stupid phishing links. You don't know who's going to be able to be bribed if they're in desperate straits financially or any other reason. So yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, and how do you even ask? Like now, I saw like
Right.
on airports. They ask, "Oh, are you a terrorist?"
That's right.
But then I read somewhere that that there was like a Korean operative
Yep.
working in an American company
Mhm.
that was and how he got hired was because he used changed his voice and face with deep fake,
Yep.
and it was like pretty convincing. So he worked there for like 3 weeks or something like that,
Mhm.
and the first day he started working there, he started uploading malicious malware into their system. So
Yep.
how do you like on the job interview? Oh, are you like a Korean
Right.
agent
Yeah.
or?
And of course, if they say no, that they must be honest, right? Like they must be telling the truth. If they say no, I'm not a terrorist. I'm not a espionage, like a government plant. But
Yeah, like
what's funnier about that story you just told is imagine what would have happened if they would have been more patient and not just jumped the gun and immediately started trying to upload malware, or two, until like the company trusted them a little bit more. Or two, what if they would have taken non-cyber routes? What if they would have bugged a corporate boardroom? What if they would have stolen physical documents or copied them, take pictures of them or something? Like or planted man-in-the-middle devices so that somebody could be on their network. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff they could have done that they would not have. They're very unlikely to get caught. Like
yeah.
it's impressive that the North Koreans went to that level of trouble to get into that company, and then they weren't patient enough to take it slow.
Yeah, and do more. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
saying that they should, but like
yeah, yeah. Of course,
they could do more damage there. We take, yeah,
of course.
but yeah, we are really like good people. We are not condoning any illegal activities here. So, disclaimer was at the beginning of the stream, and so I wanted to ask, physical audit
Mhm.
versus physical pen testing. Like, what is
Yes.
the difference? Can you explain?
Right. Okay. So I will turn the question back on you, and I will ask you this question. When you run, if I was a company, and let's say I have a website called awesome.com, and whoever, I'm sure somebody owns the website awesome.com, but let's say for a moment I own awesome.com, and I say I would like you to run an internal network pen test on my company. And what is the ultimate, what is the top thing you want to do as an internal network pen test?
To scan the network and find the vulnerabilities.
Yeah, yeah, but what is your ultimate goal? So you scan, you do all your
Oh, write
recon.
the report.
Yeah, yeah. So you want to write the report, and to get the highest level of privilege, what are you going to go after? Almost guaranteed he's going to be running Microsoft Active Directory because every company in the
Oh
world
yeah,
does it. Right. So you're probably going to want the domain admin, right?
yes, yes.
So like wherever you start and whatever the network topology is and whatever services they're running, you want domain admin, right? It's like that's the goal. And as soon as you get that, you're like, all right, done. We're done. Well, a pen test is kind of like that. A physical pen test is we are looking for the crown jewels. Either the client has said, these are the things we want you to do, or you on your assessment during your recon phase have said, this is the most sensitive, important thing that we're going to go after, or a combination of both. And you're going to try and go get those things in as many ways, ideally, as many ways as you can to show, well, we could get in through this way, we could get in through this way, we could get in through this way. And then in the report, you have like, 20, 30 things that you did. Um, an audit, but in doing that, you're not testing everything, right? You don't have time to test everything, and stealth is a concern. So you're not actually testing every aspect of their security. What you're doing is in a stealthy manner, or at least starting off stealthy, you are trying to get to the equivalent of domain admin. Maybe that's get into the server room, maybe that's get into the CFO's office, maybe whatever. But you're not testing everything. An audit, by comparison, you do test everything. You're not trying to be covert. You show up in the morning, 9 a.m., whatever. You walk in the front door, they give you an ID badge, a guest badge, whatever. And you do go through and you test everything. You test if there are dead zones in the building of like, oh, hey, did you know your security cameras and your sensors actually don't cover this whole wing of the building when you should? That you might do stupid stuff like, oh, I'm going to take this Post-it note. I'm going to go to lunch and I'm going to take this Post-it note and I'm going to put it on this camera. And I'm going to call the SOC or the facility manager in an hour, and you're going to tell me, Did anybody report something? Is there any bells or whistles going off? You're going to take an access control system off the wall and say, hey, are you running OSDP version 2 with encrypted comms, or are you running WeGAN, from the 1970s, right? You're going to test all of these things. And that's the idea, is that you test everything. An audit is what most companies should start with, because an audit is, we will test everything physical in your company, and we will try to get your security up to a good level. And then say 6 months later, we will come back once your security is up to a good level and test your security of how your personnel use it. So it's like, okay, so now you have all the cameras and the alarms and the sensors and this and that, and you're running unclonable ID badges and biometrics or whatever. And now we're going to come back and see, is it actually still possible to get into the building, right? Can we still, as an attacker, do we see vulnerabilities and holes? And that's usually kind of the difference of what you're doing. Most companies, the overwhelming majority of companies, should start with an audit. They should not start with pen testing, because most companies don't need it. It's kind of like if you go to a company, or if I'm a client and I come to you and I say, hi, I've heard really good things about you with your pen testing abilities. Here's my website. I'm running Windows XP as all my stuff. Could you run a full-on month-long 10-person red team engagement against my, unencrypted HTTP only website that's the backend is running Windows XP, right? You'd be like, I could, but why? Like, I can already see like 30 flaws, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the idea, is like you want to get their security up to a comparable level before you actually go and test it.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very good explanation and intro into both. And so, are there any stories you would like to share with us that they are not included in your trainings?
Again, this is 18-ish years of doing this kind of thing, so there's lots of stories. There's lots of stuff.
We like to listen to stories. Yeah.
Sure. Let me think. Okay, I can tell you one story from a recent engagement that I did that was kind of funny. So when you break into buildings, one of the things that you want is persistence, right? So most clients and organizations, they don't really care if you can get into the building, for the same reason that if I had a brick, I can get into 90% of buildings, right? I go up to the window, I throw a brick through window, I walk inside. But they don't care about that, because if I took 2 steps into their building and armed guards are immediately putting me in handcuffs, they're going to look at that as a win, right? They're going to be like, yeah, dude, this guy broke in through the window, but within 5 seconds, we already had him in handcuffs and he was getting hauled off. It's like, look at how great our security is. What they really care about is, what did you do once you got inside? Did you have persistence? Meaning, did you come and go as you pleased? And were you ever caught? Like, these are the things that most companies actually care about. And in one engagement that I did recently, I found a way of gaining persistence into the building. And let me back up for a second. So when you're running an engagement, if the client doesn't care about stealth, so usually when you're running a physical pen test, you fall into one of 2 categories. Either it's like the CFO is trying to convince the board to give you a bigger budget for physical security next year, and he's trying to scare the hell out of the board of directors. Basically, the head of physical security has a really impossible job, same as the CISO. Keep us completely safe on the minimal budget we can give to you, right? That's really, really hard to do. And so sometimes somebody in charge of physical security will come along and they'll say, hey, we want to scare the board of directors by running a pen test, by using our menial budget to run a pen test, show how bad things can be, how bad people can do. And that will scare the board into giving us a reasonable budget to fix things next year. And in those cases, you do actually have to usually use stealth. But in the other side of things, you might be, hey, we want you to run a pen test and we just want to see how bad things could get, and we don't really care about stealth. We just want you to do X, Y, and Z. And in those cases, what you do is you start off as stealthy as you can. After your recon, you put a list together. Here's all the ways we think we can get inside. And you organize them based on the most likely to succeed and the most likely to get you caught. And you kind of start running down the list, right? You start doing all the things. And towards the end of the engagement, you're doing some really, really stupid stuff. And towards the end of this engagement, we had already gotten all the flags that the client set out for us. We had already gotten into the headquarters. We had gotten into, all these different buildings, and we had planted flags, and we had planted business cards, and we had bugged the building, and we'd done all this stuff, right? And so we had also found ways of getting persistence. And we wanted to see, is it possible to gain persistence in a stupid way and people not notice? Have you ever seen those little alarm things? They're about this big, they're green, and they're on the inside of a door, so that if somebody were to move the handle of a door, it presses down on a little button that sounds an alarm. So on the inside of a door, there's usually this big green plastic thing. It's about this big. And if you on the outside turn the handle, so if you pick the lock or something and you open the door or whatever, when the handle on the inside goes down, it'll hit a button, the alarm goes off. So what I did was I got into the building again. I went all the way up to the archive room, which is one of the places that they were like, oh, you should never be allowed to get in here. And I started unscrewing the alarm guard and tilting it, so that when you use the handle, it wouldn't set it off. So instead of being upright and the thing, the handle moving it, I just tilted it over so that when you move the handle, it wouldn't set it off. And then when I opened the door, I just took some duct tape and duct taped the plunger, the plunger when you open the door, I just duct taped it closed. And I just did that all the way out to the building so that I had a route that I could just come back in as I pleased. And it was funny because we left that there. Now the client said we could, but we left that there for 3 days. And props to the amazing duct tape that we were using because it was still there. And then when I walked the client through the building, we were like, well, here's a route that we decided to use. And we walk him all the way through every security aspect that we had. And we show him the archive room. And he's like, holy crap, like that actually worked. And I was showing him the duct tape. And so these are stupid things, right? But they're funny because they work. I mean, again, I can think of a lot of really stupid things. This just happened to be one that I did recently. Are there any types of stories that you want to hear? Because I'm thinking of a bunch, and I don't know what's going to be fun. So if there's any banks or government offices or anything like that, like I can think of a lot of stories.
Yeah. So maybe one bank, one office
Okay.
building, and then maybe
Okay.
something fun at the end, three of them.
Sure. Sure. Okay. So there was a bank that I did a while back, and I think this was a few years back. And so during the embedded recon phase of the engagement, this is where I go in, I dress up slightly, I look like, and my cover is I'm going in to open a bank account, right? So this is how I'm getting into the building. So when you're doing embedded recon, you're just thinking of ways that you could legitimately get into the building under real or false pretext that any normal person could, right? So I'm walking in, I'm looking around, and most banks will offer you free coffee, right? They'll have little coffee machines or whatever else because they want your money. So I come in and I'm on what I consider to be my cloak of invisibility, because if you're on the phone, nobody wants to mess with you because they don't want to be rude. So I walk into the building, I'm dressed fairly nicely, I'm on my phone, I walk directly up to the coffee machine, I get myself a coffee, and I just kind of stand in the corner drinking coffee. I'm using this to look, for cameras and alarms and how personnel work and where they're entering and other things. And what I notice is there is a access control system that they have, which has like a little turnstile which opens up. So you walk up to the thing, you badge in, and a little gate opens, and the gate is only it's like 2 meters tall, right? So I'm not a really tall guy, but even I could jump it. And on top, so this particular turnstile has pressure sensors and a laser, so that if you were to jump over that, it will set off an alarm. But what I noticed was that while I'm sipping my coffee and other things, I noticed that a lot of employees are bringing their purse, their belongings, their backpack, their whatever in one hand and their ID badge in another. And they put the bag onto the pressure sensor, they swipe the badge, and then they drag the bag across the turnstile. And in the process of doing that, they set off the alarm. The pressure sensor sets off. And so for about 1 second, while they're dragging their bag across, the alarm goes off. And you hear this really loud, obnoxious beeping sound. And the guards in the lobby had become so complacent to this particular sound, because every single employee who did this, not everyone, but most employees did this, that they would do this. They'd be looking, they'd be flirting with some person some cute girl who walked in or whatever, and they would just glance over and they'd kind of give somebody a once over and they're like, yeah, that looks fine. And then they would just go back to doing whatever they were doing. Seeing this, it's kind of funny that you mentioned a girl in a red dress earlier, because we actually used a girl in a red dress. So what we did was I walk in again several days later, and this time I'm wearing a badge. We had taken a picture and it looks it's not a real badge because they were using badges that couldn't be cloned, but it was a badge that looked just like theirs. So we got a high def picture of an employee badge, and we printed out one that looked just like it, and we were wearing it. I walk in, I'm on my cloak of invisibility. I go straight for the coffee. I drink their coffee, and I start walking towards the turnstile. And as I'm walking towards the turnstile, that is the cue. So I'm actually on the phone with my female colleague, and we're literally having a conversation. That's one thing that people don't realize when you're running physical pen tests. If you're pretending to be on the phone, just be on the phone. You can talk to your team, right? Like if I'm saying like, oh yeah, I'm about to go inside, blah, blah, that could be real. But anyway, so I'm talking to her on the phone, and I say, okay, now come in. Girl walks in a red dress, and she's carrying a whole stack of stuff that looks important. It's spreadsheets and graphs and all this kind of stuff. And she's coming in wanting to get a loan, right? She's arguing like, oh, I'm coming here because I'm interested in a bank loan. As she's walking in heels, she purposefully trips and drops all the papers everywhere, making a scene in the middle of the room. And as soon as she does that, I hop the turnstile. Now, as I hop the turnstile, the alarm goes off, but the alarm always goes off. And so I had a bag in my left hand and my fake ID in my right hand. And having jumped the turnstile, the guard glances back and he sees, again, a man who looks properly dressed with a badge in his right hand, a bag in his hand. And he has seen that hundreds of times. And he thinks, oh, that guy just badged in and drug his bag across the thing like everybody else. And that was a way of getting inside. Now, there was other ways that we got inside because, again, you want to do it in many ways as you can. But that was a way that you got inside. And it was just simple observation of patterns, right? So,
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that anybody can do that. Like it's like, oh, I had to go to engineering or spy school to learn. It's like, no, come on, you can do this. You just have to have confidence. One thing that I highly recommend everybody do, you do not have to be a master lockpicker. You do not have to be a master social engineer. Everybody has their specialties. But the one thing that every person has to be good at is what I call the escape clause. And that is if you are on the job site, if you're on the target building and somebody comes up to you and says, I don't know you, who are you? Or they accost you in some way, how do you get out of it? Because you have to be good at that. That's the one thing you have to be good at. Because if you were the girl in the red dress in that situation and you drop all the papers and somebody comes rushing up to you to help you and you freeze because you're like, oh no, I'm so nervous, right? You might like seriously, give up the entire engagement. Or if you're doing embedded recon and somebody comes up to you and they start talking to you and they say, hey, you're not an employee. Like, who are you? And you just go, shit. Like, okay, yeah, the jig is up, right? Like you have to be better at it than that. The better you are at the escape clause, the more chances you get effectively. That's really, think of it like a video game. The better you are at that, the more little lives you have to play with. The worse you are at that, you're playing on hard mode where if you get stopped one time, game's over.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So probably you have to come with like excuse or like few of them, and then accordingly
yes,
to the situation, you use the best one.
exactly. So your escape clause cannot be one thing. It has to be a series of things. So what I mean by that is if I'm walking around your building, if I'm doing like short range recon and I'm like wearing cameras or something, I'm walking a dog and I'm walking around the perimeter to see inside. And for whatever reason, some guard comes out to me and he's like, who are you? I've seen you walk 10 laps around here. I can look at him and I can go, dude, I'm walking my dog on a public street. Who are you? Right? Like I could do that. I mean, that's confrontational, but if I'm on a public street walking my dog, it's like, I can be here, But if I go into the building and that same guard were to walk up to me, I can't just go like, dude, I'm just walking here. Who are you? Right? Like I need something else, right? I need a better excuse. So your escape clause has to evolve depending on where you are and what you're doing. And you just have to be convincing when you give it. You just have to be calm and you have to practice, talking to people in situations that make you nervous.
That's actually what I'm doing now because I was super scared of public speaking, so I started a stream. It makes sense, right?
It does, and good for you. Good for you for taking this, and hopefully by doing this, you're going to overcome that fear of public speaking, and you'll be a much better pen tester, physical pen tester.
Yeah, I think it's already working because I had a keynote last year and
Congratulations.
it didn't go too well, but now I'm actually practicing that, and I had been invited to podcasts, and I got invited to the same conference this year as well, and I have two presentations, so I will have a chance to redo the not so great experience from the last year, and so yeah, I'm already prepared and geared, and so what I just notice that you just have to learn the presentation, prepare like how do you present, and that's like the preparation makes the stress less. So yeah, you just have to be prepared.
Absolutely. And there are no failures. There's just learning opportunities.
Yeah, that's yeah. So is that okay with you if I just show a lock picking video to everyone?
Yeah, of
And
course.
because so hope that works.
Lawyer, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I thought it might be fun to show you what it looks like to pick a lock if you could watch from the inside. So I mounted this cutaway cylinder in the vise, and we're going to pick it 3 different ways. First, we will single pin pick it, then I will show you what it looks like to use a wave rake, and finally we'll open it up using a leashy tool. Let's get started. I'm going to insert a turning tool in the bottom of the keyway, then use this short hook, nothing on 1, little click on 2, nothing on 3, nothing on 4, maybe a little something on 5. 6 is binding very tightly. Nice click out of 6, back to the beginning. Nothing on 1, 2, 3 is binding. Nice click out of 3, and we got it open. Okay, let's move on to a wave rake, and before I actually pick with it, I want to show you just how quickly this makes those pins move. You can see why it's such an effective tool. Let's put that turning tool back in and see how fast we can open this lock. And the answer is pretty quickly. Let's do that a couple more times. Even faster the second time. And the third was quick as well. Okay, let's wrap this up by picking it with a leashy tool. Okay, nothing on 1. 2 is binding. Little click there. Nothing on 3. Nothing on 4. 5 is binding, little click there. 6 is binding, click out of 6, back to the beginning. Click out of 1, it feels set. 2 feels set. Click out of 3, 3 feels set. 4 is binding very tightly. 4 could be set. Nothing on 5. 6 is binding, click there. I suspect we're pretty close. Nothing on 1, 2, 3, 4 is binding, little click there, and we got this open. Okay, folks, I don't know about you, but I love being able to see the internals of a lock. Cutaway cylinders essentially give you a form of X-ray vision, letting you watch the exploit in real time and understand it better. So, I hope you enjoyed this, but that's all I have for you today. If you do have any questions or comments about this, please put them below. If you like this video,
Yeah, so I will share the link in the chat.
Sure.
And wanted to if you could follow up this video, tell us more about lockpicking and what tools do you need there. He showed us 3 tools. And how would your lockpicking tool set look like? And before I wanted also like mention again the disclaimer, because lockpicking in Poland is not super illegal. So it's just for educational purpose for physical pen testers, for penetration testers, for auditors. So we are not really teaching you how to pick a lock, but just talking about it, and it's educational. So okay, give it back to you.
Sure. So with lockpicking, there are various levels of skill. So the easiest way to lockpick is to use kinetic attacks. So if you're just starting out or noise isn't a big issue, use a pick gun. In Europe, there's a company called Multipick that sells, I think they have like the Atlas and the Kronos or whatever. It's basically just a really big electric toothbrush with a very thin metal rod that just bounces up and down and acts. If you've ever seen that Newton's cradle where you have the balls that just do this, but only the ends move, you're effectively using the same principle of physics. where you have when you look inside of a typical pin tumbler lock, you're going to have the key pin, the driver pin, and the spring. And by slapping the entire pin stack, the key pin, the driver pin, the spring, at the same time, ideally what is happening is that the key pin is staying in place and the driver pin is moving up. But you're doing that to every pin, in all the pin stacks. And so the idea there is that if you've got a tension rod and you got an electric pick gun and you're just using it, hopefully you can pop it open really easy for a typical pin tumbler lock. The downside of that, of course, is that it is loud. You might not think it's loud, but if it's in the middle of the night or you're in an office and it's populated with people and you're sitting there and you hear this like bzz, bzz, bzz kind of sound, oh, it's loud. Just wait until you come to class next week to learn how to do all this, and you have like 10 people in a room, like all doing it at the exact same time. It's loud. But so that would be a good place to start. If you're a little bit more advanced or you want to be a little bit more quiet, than a rake. So it's just a tension tool and a rake, it's just a pick that kind of looks like a squiggle, and you just kind of rake or zip or do things like this. These are all tools that you could use. And then of course, if you're on the more skilled side, a single pin pick, where you just have like a little hook and you're doing the lock picking lawyer kind of thing, and maybe you're even narrating like, well, there's a little bit of tension on pin number 4, and you're doing all this. It's if you get to that level, then yeah, sure, a single tension wrench and a single lock pick and a single pin pick is good to go. That said, you never want to just plan for pin tumbler locks, because there are tubular locks where it's like a circle, the keyway is like a big circle. Then there's cross locks where the lock itself looks like a cross and you have 4 pin stacks. And there are wafer locks and warded locks, and there's lots of different kinds, right? So I would recommend that if you're doing this, to have a series of lock picks for each type of lock, because you don't want to get inside. Say that you've broken into a building, you've done all the recon, you've managed to get inside, you've managed to get to the server room, and the server rack is locked with a wafer lock, and you don't know how to pick it, or you can't pick it because you didn't bring the tools, and it's like, well, that sucks. So know at least how to pick these locks and have somebody on your team who knows how to do it, right? You don't all have to be the master lock picker. You don't all have to be the building scaler or whatever. But it is good that if you took all your team in aggregate, you would say, okay, do we have somebody on the team who can social engineer? Check. Do we have somebody on the team who could scale up the building if we need to? Check. Like you have those skill sets, checked off. So that said, if the crown jewel of your engagement is to break into a safe and there's only one person on your team who's like the master safe cracker, do not waste them on like, oh, well, we're going to send you in to do embedded recon or social engineer the secretary or something. It's like, if the entire operation hinges on this one person who can break into a safe, protect him, insulate him at all costs. Because if he gets burned, then the engagement could be over.
Yeah, it's game over. I saw a comment in the chat, it's too blow torches.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, if you're allowed some acetylene torches, go for it, man. Go full on. And I had an engagement recently where the client contact was like, hey, if you see a camera that has exposed wires, cut it. I don't care. And it's like, okay. So sometimes you'll get some awesome clients and they're like, yeah, we don't care. Just you wreck our security. And it's like, those are fun jobs. Those are really fun jobs.
Yeah. It's like doing denial of service on a pen testing engagement. Like that's always forbidden. So,
in a lot of ways, yeah. And for all of your audience, there actually is a denial of service when it comes to physical security, and that is the police. If you look at major cities right now, like London or certain other major cities, and you see how much crime is going on, like petty theft, like break-ins, and then how much crime is actually being solved, there is a wild disconnect of like, you may have hundreds or thousands of petty crimes, people breaking into storefronts and stealing stuff. And then you look at how many of those crimes are actually solved, and it's like 10%, 20%. Yeah, that's basically a denial of service. I mean, so many people are doing this that the police literally just can't keep up. So yeah, it does exist.
But if police comes to your engagement, so you should probably have some documentation with you to not go into jail, right?
Yes. You always never go anywhere near the client site without the get out of jail card. And having been in Romania many years ago, in Eastern Romania, I learned a lesson that I should have known. It's, one of those things that I should have known better. Do not, when you are dealing with armed security, put your get out of jail letter in your back pocket and say, no, I have a get out of jail card. Let me show you, and reach behind you and go to grab it. That will not go well for you. So it's, but just I have a get out of jail letter. It's in my pocket. You can grab it, whatever you need. But yeah, always have that letter with you. And I know this destroys the James Bond vibe of pen testing. Tell your client contact when you are going to be breaking into their building so that you can guarantee they're actually awake. Because you don't want to find yourself at 2 or 3 in the morning breaking into a building, and if you get caught and you say, no, I have client contacts, here, call them, and then they don't answer the phone, that's not a good time.
Thank you. And I have a question in the chat. Do you have a fake jail card just in case you can pass the security guards?
Yes. So you can, okay, you are allowed to, in most cases, you are allowed to lie to everybody except for police. If it comes to police, you cannot lie to them. You cannot say, no, I'm an employee here. But everybody else, you can lie. So I recommend, as cover stories or escape clauses or anything else, you can have fake work orders typed up. You can have fake get out of jail letters typed up. You can have any type of fake document you want typed up, with one exception. You cannot impersonate a cop. So you can't come in and say, haha, see, here's my badge, right? Like, I'm a cop, let me in. So when it comes to police and things like that, they're totally off the table. But anything else, you absolutely can. I did an engagement recently where it was a surprisingly hard engagement because it was a very, very small branch office of like 10 people worked in this office, and they all knew each other very well. So it was really hard to get in because it was like, breaking in at night was easy because their nighttime security was terrible. But breaking in during the day was really hard because everybody knew everybody. So it was not an easy thing to do. But in that particular instance, I did use a fake work order. I had learned through elicitation that they had actually had a real break-in attempt like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before. And what I had done was, so I figured this out through elicitation and social engineering. And then what I did was I came back later on and I posed as an insurance guy. So I figured out who the building owner used for insurance. And then I posed as a insurance rep. I printed out a fake work order and said, you had an attempted break-in 3 weeks ago. And for insurance purposes, I have to come in and photograph all this internal security systems that you have so that if something does happen, we can say, you are not liable, we are liable. And so what I did was I showed up and I had my camera and I looked like an insurance guy, and I had a fairly nice camera, not a great camera, but fairly nice, Nikon camera. And I show up and I'm taking pictures, and pretty soon they kind of ignore me, and then I can go into the server room and do the things I need to do. But yeah, you can bring fake orders all the time. Absolutely. The only exception is if the client contact for whatever reason says you can't, which is I can't ever think of an instance where that's happened, but you always have to acquiesce to whatever your client contact says. So, but in 99% of cases, they're not going to care if you social engineer the employees, because that's part of the game.
Yeah, but dressing as police is
No.
big no. So
never
again,
dress as a
don't do
cop.
that.
Yeah,
it will get you in trouble. So
that will legitimately get you in trouble.
Another question from the chat: have you ever encountered a high security that you couldn't go inside? Like it wasn't successful, I think.
Sort of. Okay, so I can think of 2 instances right off the bat with really high security. So there was one instance. Okay, I'll give you. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you both. Okay, so 2 instances. I'll try to be quick. So in one instance, what we noticed was we were in the capital city of a country, and our job was to get into a very high security, like really high security. This is an organization that had unclonable badges, armed guards, 24/7 security monitoring on site. They had biometrics. They had one-way turnstiles. So when you came into the front door of this organization, there is several armed guards standing in the lobby. You have to come in with an unclonable badge in. There's basically a it's like a phone booth looking thing. So one way opens up, you step inside, one way closes, you give a biometric, the second door opens, you go outside. So basically creates a man trap, right? You're inside of a man trap. And that's what you have to do just to get into the building. And then every single floor, you have to use that unclonable badge to go floor to floor in certain places. And so the security was really good. I'm sitting at a kebab shop across the street at like 6 in the morning. When you're running physical pen tests, by the way, you have to be there before employees show up, the whole day, after they leave. You've got to be there all the time, right? So this is one of the many reasons not to do it alone, because if you do, you're going to be sitting there all day, like monitoring. But at 6 in the morning, what I noticed was right at 6, I see a security guard walking the perimeter of the building, and he opens up, he uses his key, he opens up the door, he gets on his radio, and he says something. And then he walks off. The door closes behind him, and he walks to the next door, and he does the exact same thing. And he does this around the entire building. And I kind of follow him. I use some of my teammates. We all kind of follow him, and not so he can't tell that he's being followed. And we notice what he's probably doing is running a shift change. And what he's probably doing is every single day he's opening the door at shift change to say, I just opened door number 5. Did you see the alert at the physical SOC? And they will say, yeah, we saw it. By the way, I've lost your video, so could you just say something so I know if you're still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay, perfect. So anyway, so we see this guy, and he does this the entire building, right? And then he goes into the parking garage, which is underground. And we're able to follow him into the parking garage. One of our employees follows him into the parking garage. And what we notice is in the parking garage, there's this old stairwell door that when he opens it and it's going to close, it takes something stupid like 32 seconds for that door to close. And so we are able the next day to place ourselves in a situation where when he comes in at 6 a.m. to open that door, somebody scurries in as he leaves before that door closes and get into the stairwell. Now, the interesting thing is this. We run up the stairwell, and this is me doing it, by the way. So I run up the stairwell, and I sit on the balcony. I sit on like the terrace, and I am sitting right in front of the camera. But the interesting thing is that because it's an external facing camera in a major urban city in daylight hours, nobody was paying attention to it. Because they don't have the SMS set for like motion to turn on. Because if you're in an urban environment and you have a surveillance camera like pointed out in a public area, every 5 seconds you're going to get an alert. Hey, saw motion. Hey, saw motion. Hey, saw motion. Right. So you don't do that on external facing cameras in urban environments. And as a result, that wasn't going on. So I'm just sitting there, and I sit there from 6 o'clock in the morning until 9 a.m. I'm watching Netflix. I'm on Reddit. I'm doing stupid stuff. And at 9 a.m., employees have now come to the building, and they come out to the terrace to smoke and drink and have coffee and other things. And that's when I use to move into the building. And so this was a situation where it would have been almost impossible to get in through the front door because we can't clone the badge. Theft was not allowed. We definitely couldn't hack the biometric machine with armed guards watching us. So it would have been almost impossible to get in through the front door, but this was a very easy way to get in through the back door. Now, humorously, we also managed to get in a different way with ladders, but that's a different story. This was a way that we could abuse, some recon to figure out a way to get into a very, very high security facility. And going back to the lockpicking thing, because this was a high security facility, this was an organization that had every floor had a key box where they kept very, very confidential records in lockers. This is one of the reasons why it was very good to be able to pick locks, because we were able to get these locks open and get keys to open up public records, show that we could have stolen, or not public records, but very confidential records, and show that we could have done it and all this kind of stuff. Humorously, the client contact at the end of this engagement, he said, just be stupid. Like, see how far you can take this. See how dumb you can be before somebody gets, weary of you. And so one of the things that I did was I went to the most secure floor in this building, and I opened up the key box, and I took every single key out of the key box, and I just stuffed my pockets full of it, and I walked off. And the funny thing is, I learned this later, that somebody did call and say all the keys are missing. But because this had never happened and they had no standard operating procedure of what to do in such a situation, the head of the physical security just goes, oh, well, the keys are probably all in use. There's like every single one of them on this floor. Every single archive is simultaneously being opened and looked into. And it was funny because it was obviously something that went into the report, but it was kind of hilarious because it was like they'd never tested it. They had no idea, like, what do we do if every single key is gone? So that was funny. There was another instance that we were doing with extremely high security, and we legitimately could not find a way in. We spent about a week doing recon, and we were like banging our heads on a wall, like, dude, we cannot figure a way to get into this place. And what we could do is this building in the lobby on the first floor had a cafe. So it's not really a public cafe, but anybody could walk in and go to this cafe. It was really meant for like the employees and the guests of the building. But they had a cafe, we could go into it. So we started frequenting the cafe and doing some elicitation and making some friends and other things. And like after a week of making buddies and doing asset acquisition and other things, we finally met somebody who is kind of a more senior person. And one of our female colleagues was able to elicit information from him that this company was having a big row or a big fight with their security provider. And their security provider basically their contract for security had just ended, and the new contract was about to be signed, but they were going to increase the cost by something ridiculous. It was like by like 80% or something huge, like some massive increase. And the company basically said, dude, we're not paying that. Like, so we got a bill, and it's not the normal bill. It's like 80% higher. It's like, we're not paying this, because it was for like a 5-year contract. And so she was able to elicit this information that the company was having this big, fight with their security provider, and that there were going to be 2 or 3 days where they had no security provider while they were doing a changeover. And that meant that there was 2 or 3 days where, yes, the alarms might go off, or yes, people might see you on cameras, but nobody's watching, because there is no security provider anymore. For 2 or 3 days, there was a changeover for like a few days where there was nobody going to be watching or monitoring. And so then we could be a little bit more destructive, and we could be like, all right, well, we can go in and be a little bit more destructive than we normally would be.
Can I follow up with another question from the chat?
Sure.
Are you allowed to steal things from employees, like a badge or yeah? Because I watched a video as well, that assessment, and the testers took a laptop that was just left there without any protection. So is it like you can steal things, or just take pictures that you were logged in, like you could go somewhere and there's a badge, there's like documents on the desk? Okay.
Yes, this is a very, very good question, and a very important question. So are you allowed to steal things like laptops and phones? If they are company property and the client says yes, the answer is yes. With one exception, it has to be on the work premise. I cannot follow you onto the bus or to the cafe and steal from you there. No employer can give me authorization to stalk you into a cafe. Right? I like your employer, whoever you work for, they can't give me permission to follow you on the bus and pick stuff out of your bag, right? And that's the other thing, is that even if it's a work laptop and they're like, oh yeah, if you can steal work laptops, if I see your ID badge, your work laptop, your work phone, even if it's like a work phone that is unlocked in a woman's purse and nobody's around, I can't touch it, because I can't reach into her purse and grab the phone, right? So there are caveats of what you can touch and what you can't. And the same thing goes for like keys. So if you see like a key fob, this is a common occurrence. Let's say that you've broken into a building and you haven't yet cloned an ID badge, but you see, and let's say that this building is running key fobs, not ID cards, but the little like key fobs that you'll have on like your keychain, right? And let's say that you see a set of keys, it's lunchtime, all the employees are out to lunch, and you go to a desk and you see a set of keys right there on the desk, nobody's around, and there are 2 key fobs on that keychain. If you do not know which one is which, you cannot clone it. Because think about what the employer would say if you said, oh, we cloned a badge, but it didn't work. And they say, oh yeah, that's because it's to my front door. You cloned an employee's home, or you clone an employee's private thing, right? That employee could now sue you or sue the employer for a whole lot of money. So you are allowed to steal some things. You are not allowed. You have to be really, really careful about what you do. You can never go into people's personal effects. You can only touch company property on the company premise. I've stolen many laptops, many phones, ID badges, all kinds of stuff, but they have to be on the premise and they have to be company stuff, right? If it's a personal laptop that they use for work stuff, I can't touch it. Even if the employee leaves it unlocked, they go to lunch, the laptop's open, it's unlocked, and it's like government secrets. Like I still couldn't touch it because it's their personal laptop. I can't go thumbing through it. So you have to be very careful about what is allowed and what's not. And you kind of have to hold your client's hand if the client just tells you, oh yeah, steal stuff from employees, that's perfectly, it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. Because I don't want you to get sued. I don't want to get sued. So there are caveats.
Yeah, hold on there.
Yeah.
But you have to ask the client if you are allowed to take things, or
Yes.
and he has to give you permission. So otherwise, you cannot do anything. So it's mostly like taking pictures if
Correct.
it's like without previous permission.
Correct. And here's an interesting gray area. So here, okay, I'm gonna give you a scene that I was on about 4 years ago. So about 4 years ago, I'm doing an engagement, and in this particular country, it is legal to take pictures of individuals in public spaces. Okay, not every country is like that. Not every country allows me to just go up to you and take pictures if you're outside, right? But this particular country, it was okay for me to be taking pictures of people as long as they were in public spaces. So I'm sitting in a hotel room with a telescope and a big freaking camera. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get employees as they're walking in, and I'm trying to get a picture of their ID badge. So I want to copy their ID badge, right? Yeah, exactly. Now here's the scene that I find. In front of the building, there's a little park, and I see a guy who clearly is an employee there, and he's got that badge, and he sits down. And then a woman, about 5-10 minutes later, comes up and sits next to him. And I can tell that they're both employees because they're both wearing badges. And I'm taking pictures of their badges. They are both wearing wedding rings. They're both wearing wedding bands, and they're holding hands and they're kissing and things like this. And I was like, okay, wedding couple, married couple, whatever. A third employee, about 30 minutes later, starts walking up to the two of them, and they fire apart. And you start realizing, oh, that is a married couple, but they are not married to each other. And so you start thinking like, okay, can I use this in the report of like, here's the pictures that I took to get the employee badge, and here, like, so you start realizing there's some gray areas here of like, oh crap, like I probably shouldn't, I should really make that picture cropped really hard so that nobody sees what that is, because you will, like when you are doing, whether you're cyber hacking or physical hacking, you can have instances like this where you're like, that's a gray area, right? Like it's legal to take pictures of people in public, but you just caught people doing something they probably don't want the public to know.
Yeah, and you can get yourself into trouble as well.
Yes, you can. And again, those employees could sue the company, or they could sue you, because if you were stupid enough to put that into the report, like the two of them kissing or whatever, and it's like, oh, but here's how I got the badge, right? And those employees found out, and you're like, we didn't, like, they could definitely go after the company. I don't know in this particular country, I don't know how the legal process of that would work, but it's definitely not something you want to explore.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask about building rapport. Do you
Yes.
have like 3, I don't know, pointers on how to do it fastest?
Sure. Okay. So rapid rapport building. When you are trying to build rapport with a human being, there are a couple things that you can do. The first thing that you need is icebreakers, right? How do you approach somebody? How do you, like, I can't just walk up to somebody and go, you have to have something. So there's a couple tips. First things first, figure out just at a glance, what is this person's needs? So if you look at a person and you say, in this moment, what does that person need? Do they need space? Do they need validation? Do they need a coffee? Do they need a shoulder to cry on? Do they need, like, I'll set a scene for you. I was recently flying, and the plane had been delayed by like 3 hours, right? It was a ridiculously long delay. And there is this poor woman, stewardess or ticket counter. I don't know her professional, like what the title is, but the woman at the airlines who's behind the ticket counter. And it is a line of people yelling at her. She is clearly not to blame for the plane being delayed by 3 hours, but it is a line of passengers just like, how dare you, I'll never fly on this airline again, blah, 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 right? So I walked up to her and I just said, you look like you've had a really rough day. And I'd recently purchased a coffee and I just said, hey, I just got this, but it looks like you could use it more. She took my coffee, she gave me a thank you, and about 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a chair. She walked up to me and she said, hey, could I see your ticket? And I said, yeah, sure. I hand her my ticket. She walks off with it. She comes back and she upgraded me to first class. So just by that little act of recognizing what somebody needs in a moment and then kind of giving that to them, you've made a buddy. You've built rapport, right? So one of the first tip that I will give you is as you move through whatever space, whether it's a pen test or your own life or whatever, recognize what people need in that moment and try to figure out if you can give it to them, right? Because and look, don't go into, when you're trying to build rapport and elicit information, don't go into it like an evil villain where you're twisting your mustache or you're like, doing one of these things like, how can I screw this person over? No. Just go into it thinking, how can I make their day a little bit better? If you go into rapport building thinking, how can I make their day a little bit better? You will often succeed because it's not complicated. It's just being a nice person. So the other tip that I will give you is doesn't build rapport, but it spots soft targets. So if I asked you to, in your head, think about what does a person who's really upset look like, you have an idea, right? It's the furrowed brow, it's the frown, it's the glare, it's all these things. If I asked you what does a happy person look like, it's the genuine smile, it's the head tilt, it's the laughing, it's all this kind of stuff. So when you imagine for a moment, so first things first, you can immediately recognize the difference between somebody who's happy and somebody who's really upset. But when you are really happy, human beings are reciprocal creatures. If I walked up to you, you didn't know me, and I'm walking past you in the hallway at work, and I said, hey, how's it going, right? Most people are going to wave back. If I'm in a conversation with you and I say, I work for company X, chances are you're going to respond by going, oh, that's interesting. I work for company Y, right? So we are reciprocal creatures. So one of the tricks that I do when I'm inside of a building or I'm doing embedded recon or anything else is I will use my cloak of invisibility and I will pick up a coffee or something else. And as I'm walking through the space, I will give a big genuine smile, a head tilt, and a salute. And it's kind of like this. You're walking through the building, you see somebody and you go, hey, something like that, right? And what I'm looking for is somebody who does it back to me. Because why? What does this do? So the closing of the eyes. If I was sitting right in front of a predator, a lion, a bear, a psychopath, whatever, I'm not closing my eyes, right? I'm staring at them because I'm watching them. What are they doing, right? Similarly, if you're standing in front of a vicious bear, lion, whatever, you're not doing this, right? You're not going, here's my neck, just take it. Like you're making yourself small and you're defending yourself. When you expose your neck and you give a big genuine smile, and yes, we can tell the difference between a genuine smile and a fake social smile. A big genuine smile, a head tilt, in a salute, or technically the FBI says an eyebrow flash, but an eyebrow flash is that thing where your eyebrows go up and down really fast, and I think that always looks creepy. Yeah, it always looks, especially for guys, if you do it to a girl, it always comes off as creepy. So instead of an eyebrow flash, I close my eyes. When you do that, when you're like, hey, how's it going? And you're doing something like this, what you're really doing is you're saying, I am a friendly person because look, I'm welcoming you, I'm greeting you, and I do not see you as a threat to me. By showing you my neck, by closing my eyes, by giving you a big genuine smile, I am saying I'm friendly and I don't see you as a threat. Now, if somebody does that back to me, that means that they also are a friendly person and they don't see me as a threat. So that's a very good candidate to walk up to and start a conversation with. Because by contrast, if I walk up and I give these little nonverbal friendship signals to somebody and they walk up and they flip me off, okay, that's not the person I want to go talk to, right? It's like, okay, but you've learned kind of who's a soft target just without even saying a word. And as long as you are pretending to be on your phone while you're doing it, there's a very good probability they will not approach you. They won't approach you even if they say, hey, I've never seen that guy before, or I don't see a badge on his belt. As long as you're pretending to be on the phone while you're doing it, chances are they're not going to interrupt that phone call. because that's really rude. You don't want to like just walk up to somebody who's on a call and be like, hey, sorry to bother you. But so it's a very easy way to very quickly decipher who's a soft target, who's an easy target. The next thing that you need is an opening line. And one of the best opening lines is an empathetic statement. And an empathetic statement can be anything that's, empathy, right? Like when I was talking about the steward, it's like, oh man, you look like you've had a really rough day. Or hey, you look like you've been, you look like you're really prepared for that meeting. Or you look like you could use a coffee, or anything like that, any kind of empathy. Now, what you don't want to say is, if I was talking to you, Dorota, and if I was talking to you and I was approaching you, I don't want to just walk up to you and go, you're looking really good today, right? Because that gets into a realm that is not professional, and my intentions suddenly seem like I'm more interested in you, like in a date, rather than, oh, I'm just saying hello. Right. So there are certain things that you don't want to do. You don't want to say those types of, empathetic statements. You want to say more of like, oh, you look really well put together today, or, oh, you know what, you look like you would use that coffee, or anything like that. And again, as long as you are acting like you're on the phone, people are not likely to come up to you and bother you, which is weird to say because you're kind of bothering them, but it's true.
Yeah, I have a weird anecdote to say that sometimes I go on the street, like in the public places. I go to women that has like some nice clothing or like a bag that I really like, and I say to her, "Oh, I really love your bag. Where did you buy it?" And they always like get so happy that they were appreciated, and like they have like nice accessories. So would that be good for a female to start in a way like, "Oh, you look really good today"?
Well,
That wouldn't be creepy anymore, or
yeah. So yes. So there are generally different rules for men and women, right? Like to a female, or really to a guy or a girl, I'm not going to do an eyebrow flash, right? I'm not going to walk up to a guy and say, "Man, you're looking pretty good today," because it's yeah, okay. But what I might do is I might say, "Hey, man, that watch is amazing. Where did you get that? Do you mind if I ask you where you got that watch?" That's perfectly fine, because really what you're doing is you're saying, "I have a common taste in fashion." So you're finding a commonality. You're basically saying, I too, like if somebody's wearing a sports jersey or a sports team or something, you're saying, I too, fellow sports enthusiast, enjoy that team, and then you have a commonality. And if you can find something that they are proud of or they're happy about, they will not shut up. So if anybody has ever gone up to a parent and said, wow, show me a picture of your child, they will just be like, oh my God, yes, let me show you every picture of my child for the last 30 years, right? If you can find a topic that they're really interested in, or they're proud of, or they really like, or something else, and you can get them talking about that, they will just keep talking. And the longer they talk and the more you validate them, the more they trust you. So it's a very, very quick way of building a lot of trust. Commonality, great one. So your idea of going up to a female and saying, wow, your purse or your clothing or your this or that, it's really great. Do you mind if I ask where you got that? Like, that's a fantastic one, because what you're really saying is, you have amazing taste in fashion. I would love to know where you got this. And you're complimenting them. You're flattering them.
I want to be friends. And so I wanted to ask you for permission first, because I actually didn't ask before. In the training, there was a picture of a surgeon that was like heartbroken. Can I ask about it? So there was a picture of a surgeon that is heartbroken, and he looks like an easy target to approach. So my question would be, where is the ethical grounds? Like, where is the line that we shouldn't cross as auditors or pen testers?
Right. So an excellent question. So in this particular case, or any case really, your job is not worth certain things. Doing a pen test is not worth risking the lives or the safety of your teammates, yourself included. I have had former military personnel who are like, we're going to break into the building next door and we're going to use a ladder to go across this rooftop on a rainy day or rainy night. And it's like, no, you're not. That's stupid. No, you're not. But similarly, when it comes to social engineering, if you see somebody who's legitimately distraught, they are clearly having an emotional event, do not approach them. Okay. Because so I had previously said, if you can recognize somebody's needs, they make soft targets. Paradoxically, one of the easiest people to spot what their needs are the grumpy guy, right? That when you see somebody who's like really upset and they're like, and they're clearly upset, you know what their needs are immediately. They need to vent. they need whatever their frustration is to be validated. So whatever they're upset about, if you can get a foothold in there and you can say, man, like, what's going on? And they say, my boss is making me work overtime, blah, 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 you know, and you can say, holy crap, I can't believe your boss is making you do that. That's horrible. That's insane. You would have made a friend. But it's not, in my opinion, an ethical thing to do if somebody is clearly emotionally upset. Like if they are sitting and their head is in their hands and they're crying, or they're really, really beside themselves, don't pick on that person. That's just that, in my opinion, that's an unethical thing. It's not worth ruining somebody or taking somebody down. Let me say it this way. If you have somebody who is clearly distraught and they are besides themselves, and you go up to them and you offer them a kernel of kindness, and then they later find out that you are using them, like, that might push them over the edge. That might be the last straw for them. Like, just don't do that. That's just not something that I would recommend.
Yeah, because like that picture made me think that maybe that person just lost a life, and
Sure.
or he might be even suicidal. So if you just
Yeah.
go there, then it might be like a very high price to pay later, right?
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. And it's very intuitive of you to, so not a lot, it takes a very empathetic person to understand that, because I have known many people who will just say, aha, soft target, I can win. And it's like, yeah, you can, fine, but come on. So yes, it's good that you caught that.
Yeah, okay. Can we move to badge cloning? Do you
Of
have any
course.
stories on that?
Yes. So I've cloned many a badge. So badge cloning can come, okay, generally speaking, badge cloning can come before you've made entry into the building or after you've made entry into the building. Just like every other aspect of OSINT, or not OSINT, but recon, you want to figure out, is the badge even clonable, right? Because you don't want to waste your time if it's not clonable. So for example, there is low frequency, high frequency, ultra high frequency. There's different types of badges, right? Without loss of generality, most low frequency badges are clonable. So if you go up to a badge reader, and there are certain devices that you can use that will show you the frequency of the badge reader, and you say, oh, this badge reader is only accepting low frequency badges, therefore it's very likely that I can clone said badge. In that case, you could try to get close to somebody with a long range reader. You could try to, if you're doing embedded recon and there's like a cafe or there's something where people put their badges and you can get close enough to clone their badges and things, you can absolutely do that. I've used long range readers before in such situations, shoulder bag or something, sitting next to a person, clone their badge. Yeah, sure, absolutely. When it comes to badge cloning, one thing that you have to know is that so the way that a badge works is that the reader is constantly emitting energy, and then the badge itself is just an antenna. So inside of a badge is just basically copper wire, and then that copper wire is hooked up to a small chip. And when the antenna, the little copper wire, picks up that energy that the reader is emitting, it powers the chip, and then the chip starts talking to the reader, and you have a communication and all that. The card and the reader have to be in this orientation, okay? You can't have a reader and a card perpendicular. It will not work. The reason why that's important to know is a very good place to clone badges on assignment is the front desk. Because oftentimes the front desk, they will have guest badges and employee badges and other things right behind the desk. But if the badge is sitting on the desk and you have a long range reader, it doesn't matter how close you get to it, it's not going to make the read. So in this particular case, I would say that what you should do instead is use a badge reader like a flipper or an iCopy or a Proxmark or something that's in constant read mode, so that it's just constantly looking for a badge. Now, unfortunately, the iCopy can't really do this too well. It can in certain, if you put it into Proxmark mode. But basically, take a device like a flipper or something that's in constant read mode. It's just constantly looking for a RFID badge. Then you use an extender. So then what you're going to do is you're going to take a little card that's just an antenna, get a rubber band or something and tape over the flipper, put all of that into your pocket, and then run the wire up through your sleeve or something else onto your hand, and then maybe wear a glove or something else, or just place it in such a way that you can't really tell. And then that way, if you reach over the desk to talk to somebody, or you oopsie your phone over the desk and you go, oh no, my phone, and you reach over the desk to get it, you can clone the badge. Even if the secretary notices that you put your hand on the badge, well, when you move the hand, the badge is still there, so they don't think anything of it, right? So that is always an option. Now, kind of like what I said earlier about you can't go through people's personal belongings, there is a big gray area of stalking employees outside of work hours. Like if I get onto a train and I notice that there's a bunch of employees on the train and they're all wearing their badges, can I go clone their badge? Like that's difficult, because you will have to, in the report, you will have to say, this is where I got that badge. And it's like, yes, technically the employees should not be wearing their badges outside of, work, outside of the office like that, because that's really stupid. But an employer can't really give you permission to do that. So it is a gray area. You could, and you can, and I have done it before, but I mean, it's a gray area of should you. Now, all that said, when you're doing, you may find that you have other ways of getting into the building. Maybe you tailgated, maybe you picked a lock, maybe you scaled a building, maybe you used an under door tool, whatever. Maybe you get into the building without actually needing a badge. And once you're in the building, then you find at lunchtime employees have left their badges at their desk or whatever. This is also absolutely an option. There is a third place that you can get badges that's really convenient, and most penetration testers overlook this third place, and it's usually not just will you get a badge, but you'll get the best badge. And that is if you break in when the cleaning staff are there. The cleaning staff very, very often will put their badge on their little trolley. So imagine like a necklace or something. They will put their badge on the trolley, and then as they go through the building with their little trolley of cleaning supplies, they'll leave the badge on the trolley, go into the toilet stalls and just start cleaning, and they will leave that alone for 5-10 minutes at a time. But that badge will get you to every floor. The employee badges may be segmented. So like, all the interns can only get to the first floor, and all the normal employees can get to this floor, and the CEOs and the board can get to this floor, but the cleaner can get to every floor, right? So that's definitely something that you should consider, even if, let's say that you have found Bob the intern, and Bob the intern's badge can be cloned, and it will only get you to the first floor. Okay, so just like a cyber pen test, now we have to privilege escalate. So now you have a method of getting into the first floor, and you're there towards the end of the day. It's 5 o'clock. People are starting to leave the building, and you notice some cleaner walks in, right, with their little trolley, and they leave their ID badge. Now, if I can clone their badge, now I've privilege escalated, because now their badge can almost guarantee to get to every floor. So yes, you can kind of daisy chain these types of attacks and kind of go from there. You don't just have to clone one badge. Now, the other thing about badge cloning that you should always check is in certain situations, the badge, okay, so let me back up for a second. Let's suppose for a minute that you have the police. So the police are a prime target because every country, every city has cops. And if I asked you how many police stations are in your city, well, it scales with the size of the city, right? How many police stations are in New York City is going to be bigger than some tiny little podunk town of 50 people. So if you are in New York City and you have the New York City Police Department, and let's say that the New York City Police Department are using really crappy clonable low frequency badges, and what some intrepid pen tester says, aha, you should not be doing that, upgrade to a MyFair DesFire version 3, okay? That's what you should do. Well, what they might do, and often do, is they will set up a card reader that can read the super awesome can't be cloned card, but it will also read the crappy stupid card, because so they're not going to update every reader at the same time. If they have 50 precincts or 50 buildings that they have to upgrade, they're not going to upgrade all of them at the same time. And if cops from this precinct have to go to this precinct and vice versa, and they need to be able to get in, back and forth, then sometimes what will happen is that they will use legacy or downgradable readers, which can read the really awesome cards and crappy cards. And so if you say, well, I checked the employee badge and the employee badge cannot be cloned, but when I check the badge reader, it actually is saying it can read the awesome cards, but also the crappy cards. So this is a really important distinction when it comes to badge reading. there are technically, on a conventional access control system, 2 languages that are spoken. There is the language between the card and the reader, which is, let's say, MyFair Classic 1K. Okay, so the card and the reader understand MyFair Classic 1K. But then the reader and the controller will speak a completely different language. So just for the sake of ease, I'm going to call that the front end and the back end. So the front end language, which is what the card and the reader are talking, may be something that you can't clone. Okay, you're running some MyFair Desfire version 3, awesome, unclonable, sweet stuff, right? But on the back end, maybe you're running this 1970s technology called WeGAN, which is about 80% of every card reader on Earth does. So even if I can't clone this, if I could pull the card reader off the wall, get onto the wire, and clip in a small device like an ESP key, then put the thing back onto the wall, the next time somebody badges in, I'm going to see that WeGAN data. Okay, the controller, all the controller will see is card number 5 badged in. That's all that they say. They don't see the encrypted stuff. They just see card number 5 badged in. If the card reader is running WeGAN, and so, okay, so then you can use an ESP key, and there's several other tricks that you can use. But what you can also do is if it's a legacy or a downgradable reader, meaning that it will read the awesome card and the crappy card, all you have to do is figure out what that crappy card technology is. Maybe it's a MyFair Classic 1K card. Well, who knows? But if the controller is just looking for card number 5, if you present card number 5 in a crappy clonable card, the controller will see card number 5. And it does not know the difference between awesome cannot be cloned card number 5 and crappy can be cloned card number 5. The controller doesn't know. So it is a valid attack that you can do to bypass that.
That's really interesting. Next question I have on my list is obtaining the plans of the building. Is that something that you have to do yourself, or you get it from the client?
So the client can give it to you, and this just depends. Some clients are very keen to help you. Some clients kind of want to be in on it. Like they kind of want to help. They want to be part of the pen test. And so they will give you a lot more information than they should. But sometimes you just have to figure it out. And you will do that through your recon, right? So in certain situations, maybe you can use drones. In certain situations, maybe you're using telescopes and long range cameras, or you're using short range recon or embedded recon or other things. But another place, any ideas on another place that you can usually get at least a somewhat idea of what is the overall building layout? The stairwell.
Oh, yeah.
When you go to the stairwell and you see a fire exit, the fire exit will usually have a little picture of the floor layout. So if you can get into the stairwell, sometimes you can see like, oh, this is what the floor layout looks like, and take a picture of that.
Right.
But you can sometimes, in some buildings, you can go public records, and some countries will allow you to look up public records and just pull the building specs. There's another way that you can do this that's a little bit of a gray area. It's kind of cheating, and you have to be really, really careful with this. But in Europe and in the United States, you often have, like, let's say you have a large 10-story building. In many instances, what you will have is you'll have every floor will be a different business, right? And let's say that floor number 5 is the business that hired you. But let's say that floor number 2 is a place that you can go into, that anyone can go into. The floor layout's probably going to be the same.
Okay.
So if you're dealing with something where it's like, oh, well, floor number 2 is publicly accessible and floor number 5 is the target floor, you can walk through and you can walk through floor number 2. Maybe it's a museum, maybe it's a restaurant, whatever. You can get at least an idea of what it might look like. Now, I highly, highly recommend that you temper that with actual investigation. Do not assume that it's going to be exactly the same, because it won't. But if you're using long range cameras or other things, yeah, sure, you can get a pretty good idea. That said, always be prepared for surprises. You may, get into a floor or getting into a place and you're like, I have no idea what this is. I've never seen this, or I'm lost. I've literally had people been in large complexes before and they're like, dude, I'm fucking lost. I have no idea where I am. And I can't ask directions because, obviously. But yeah, so it does happen. But I mean, the floor layout, you can ask for it from the client if you want. It just depends if the client's going to give it to you. Some clients will look at that and go, why are you asking for this? Because the bad guys won't be asking for this, right? you can definitely get that happen. It just depends on you know. I had a client one time who he met me at a cafe. He sat across from me and he slid documents about the building under, like in a bag under the table, like, you know, like we were doing a drug deal or something, like, you know, here's the goods, right? And it was just like I was like, dude, we're at a cafe, man. This is fine. Like, it's you know, relax. But clients can be very weird sometimes, but it's fun, you know. So, but if you want to ask for the building specs, yeah, ask for the building specs. But you can also try to figure it out through other means.
Yeah, that's in the comment, but also I thought of that he wanted to feel like he's in a spy movie, maybe.
Yep, and yes, a lot. So one of the fun things is that so when I need certain teams, like let's say that I'm going to go to Thailand and do a bank in Thailand, if I find that I need to have like 5 guys, I can call up former students or people that I know in Thailand and be like, "Yeah, you want to help me out with this thing?" And the funny thing is that I've actually had people on board of directors like be like, "Oh, dude, you're going to break into this thing. Like, I will absolutely be there to help you out." And it's funny because it's like, who doesn't want to do this job? Right? Who doesn't want to take like a week off of work to like go try and break into somewhere? It's fun. It's a fun job. So yeah, the client contact is no different. Client contacts will like a lot of times they will want to kind of be in on it and help and do stuff. So yeah, you can ask them.
Yeah, I want to show a video in a minute, but first the client contact. So you mentioned it before. So what people you should have on speed dial there in case something goes wrong?
Yes, always have 2 points of contact that you have in your get out of jail letter. Have the client contact, and then have his subordinate or somebody else who knows or something, because there may be that the client contact is out of reach. He's in a meeting, he gets sick, he's on the toilet, whatever. Always have a backup, and always let the client know, like, okay, today I'm going on site. I will be trying to do this from these hours, or we have somebody doing embedded recon inside your building right now, blah, 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 so that he's aware, right? So, because you don't want him to kind of switch off. You don't want him to kind of be like, I kind of, you know, I know we're running a pen test, but they haven't pinged me. I'm sure they're fine. And, you know, he goes about his day not thinking about it. Oh, my kid has a soccer game. You know, I'll leave my phone in my car while my, you know, little Billy is playing a soccer game or something for the next 3 hours. That could go wrong for you. So always have 2 client contacts, phone numbers, and kind of let them know, like, okay, I'm going to be on site today for these reasons.
Okay,
that's just my suggestion.
I want to show because you shared it on LinkedIn today, and I think it's super interesting. Like 2 minutes on entering a building.
Sure.
First thing we're going
Oh
to look
wait,
at
is this that retro video that I
yes,
found?
yes.
Yeah, that's an awesome
now,
video.
this is a common door lock used on most doors, where the bolt is not a deadbolt, but rather is held in place by spring pressure. In other words, you can push it back by pushing against the spring. So when I shut the door, the bolt will retract and be held in place. This locks the door. This is a lock, normally is a key and knob lock, locks from the inside. This is common on houses, apartment buildings, hotels, etc. This is the infamous lock we see in all the James Bond movies, where somebody gets a credit card and opens the door to the CIA safe house. That is possible. Way to tell if it's possible is to look at the door and see which way it opens and shuts. The bevel on the bolt will face opposite the way the door opens in normal doors. In other words, I have a flat side facing me and a beveled side facing the inside or safe part of this locked compartment. If I am trying to get entry from this side, it is possible to take a credit card, slip it between the door frame and the bevel part of the bolt, pushing the bevel back and opening the door. A better system is to use a putty knife. Even a kitchen knife will work, but a putty knife is flat, broad, very thin, and will go between the door frame and the bevel quite easily, forcing the bevel, due to its natural angle, back. This is all well and good, except for the fact that we're trying to enter from the outside, which is a normal situation with these kind of locks. So instead of a bevel, I'm placing a locked, flat portion of the bolt. Let's take a look at a couple ways that this can be defeated. First of all, I'm going to lock the door. And if we don't get in, this is it. So and we'll take a look at the bolt and see how to defeat this. These are two examples of linoleum cutting knives or
Okay, I think that's enough. The video is very long, but I just wanted to ask about gaining access to a building. Like, how do you plan it? So at first there's like an OSINT phase, probably
Yes.
when you just go like minding your business, like drinking your coffee and just looking like what kind of a lock they have in like every side of the building. How do you start that?
Okay, so all right, so there are really 4 different types of recon, and you're not going to be able to do every one of them on every engagement. But ideally, you have the OSINT phase, which is just you're looking stuff up online, right? Who's the employees, who's the personnel, building layouts if you can find them, third party, security contract, anything you can find out. Then you have long range recon. Long range recon is you're using telescopes and long range cameras to see from really, really great distances. That might not be possible in certain urban environments, right? Like if you're in a major dense city, you might not have the ability to have like a telescope out, from a vantage point to see into the client site. Then you have short range recon. Short range recon is where you're walking around the perimeter, but you're not going inside, right? You're still outside the building. So basically you're slowly closing in on the building, right? OSINT and then long range, short range. Short range, you're walking. Maybe you're walking a dog. Maybe you're holding the hand of a colleague, and you're pretending to be on a date. By the way, that is a fantastic one because when you're pretending to be on a date and you're walking past the client site, we can do Instagram stuff, and I can pretend to take a lot of pictures of you when I'm really taking pictures of like the building itself. So those are great. You could just be out for a jog. You could be doing anything you want. If you find a cafe across the street, you can kind of mix long, short, depending on how far away it is. Doing stuff during the day, is usually fairly good, but during the night, it really just depends on when you're going to do it. That aspect of recon. Then you have embedded recon. This is the closest you're getting because now you're inside the building. This is where, okay, if it's a bank, maybe I go in because I'm here to open up a bank account, or I'm here to apply for a bank loan, or anything that's legitimate, right? Not every organization will allot embedded recon. If it's a government office and you're not allowed to go in there, you can't go in to do embedded recon. But these are all the stages that you would ideally do. When you're doing that, it's really going to be situationally dependent. So I'll give you some examples. I have gone on site in the middle of the night. So actually, let me back up. What I recommend people do is slowly close in the rings. Start off with OSINT, do Google Maps or satellite imagery or everything else, and get an idea of their surrounding areas. Then look for employees, personnel, all that kind of stuff. But you should, at a bare minimum, have a satellite image of what does the place look like? What's the overhead? What are the routes? How do I get in there? How do I get out? Can I drive up? Can I drive out? Is there a hotel or a cafe nearby that I can sit at and watch? Then when you're doing your short range recon, you can hopefully get close enough without being noticed. Maybe that's in the middle of the night. Maybe that's in the middle of the day. It just depends on the situation. If there is a cafe or a restaurant, the vast majority of your pen testing is going to be in urban environments. Later on in your career, you might start doing some OT environments, and they're like, oh, we want you to do a substation in the middle of nowhere, right? So that does happen. You might be doing some type of OT environment or some factory or something in literally the middle of nowhere. And that's harder. And that's where you're going to be using a lot more long range recon. But it's really just going to be dependent. So, okay, here's an example. I was doing a logistics center fairly recently, and we had to use long range recon and satellites because we could not get close to the facility. So you can't get, in this case, we couldn't get close enough to the facility to like see what types of locks they're using and everything else. But what we could figure out is we figured out where the employees go in, what time they arrive, what they're wearing, how they enter. We're noticing that for whatever reason, the employees were splitting. And we noticed that the employees in one direction had a white badge and the employees in the other direction had a blue badge. And then we noticed that the employees with the blue badges, they went up to what looked like offices, and all the employees with the white badges stayed down on like a factory floor. So we kind of had an idea of like what badge equated to what, hierarchy within the building. And we were able to notice that all the sadly, Well, all the white badge, low level, workers, they went through metal detectors and they had all this like, kind of security. The blue badge corporate people, they didn't have any of it. And so you start seeing like flaws in the security by, doing your recon. And that, so then you start getting ideas like, all right, well, maybe we could tailgate, maybe we could check their badges, maybe we can get close to them because a lot of them ride trains, maybe. And so you just start getting ideas of what could we do? And then you list out all the possibilities. What is most likely to succeed without getting us caught? And what is the most likely to get us caught without success? And then you try them in order. But as I said earlier, the number one thing that every pen tester must be really, really good at is the escape clause. Because if you try to tailgate and you get 5 feet into that building and the person you're tailgating turns around and goes, dude, what are you doing? Who are you? Like if you just look at him and go, damn it, like the jig's up, right? Like you've just blown the entire thing. You have to be really good at it. You have to be good at what you're doing. And while it's not a big deal to tailgate somebody in a super urban environment and be like, oh, well, I'm here for a job interview. Isn't this 1234 Street? And he goes, no, this is 1235 Street or something like that. It's like, oh, sorry, I'm supposed to be next door. My bad. Okay, that's fairly legitimate. You could do that. You could pull that off. But if you're in the middle of nowhere at some like factory or something, you can't use that excuse, right? So you have to think of good escape clauses, because the escape clause will be the one thing that every pen tester needs to have down pat. They have to be good at it. Everything else is optional. You don't have to be a master lockpick. You don't have to be, whatever. But you have to be good at giving escape clauses.
Okay, and he also shows opening with the credit card.
Yes.
So then after you do the recon, then you bring with you the right tools, or do you have a tool set that is universal?
So you are going to have to bring everything that you might need. So this is where it gets tricky, because you can't bring a hiking backpack full of breaching tools, right? I can't bring like the crowbar and the acetylene torch, and you can't bring all that. So one of the things that's very, very handy is to always use the buddy system. So the buddy system is, so recently I was doing a factory, and I needed to get into the factory, and one of the ways we were going to do it was tailgating. So we're following, me and a colleague who are pretending to not know each other are following this guy as he walks towards the factory. Now the factory is in the middle of nowhere, and we have all these employees going towards the factory. And this employee that we're following, we noticed, we figured out through long range recon that right where the door is basically where the smoke deck is. So while I don't smoke, that's where we pull out a pack of cigarettes and we pretend to light up and do our best not to, choke to death while we're pretending to smoke. And the reason why we don't follow him in is because we kind of have a sixth sense that we're being followed as humans. Like we kind of like, hey, dude, like you're following me, right? And if somebody followed you from the train station all the way down a few blocks, through a field into the work or something, it's like, okay, this is really weird, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as we got there, we stopped and we both broke out the cigarettes and tried not to, cough our lungs out. And we're sitting there for a while and we strike up conversations and we're laughing with people and we're building rapport. And then we find a good person to tailgate into, right? But while we tailgate in, we don't do it at the same time. I tailgate in, he stays outside. And then he stays outside, and then later on he finds a good entrance to tailgate in, and he comes in. And so you can do stuff like that where the buddy system is useful, because he actually ended up getting locked out in a stairwell, and I came and helped him out. And there are situations where things like this can be helped. I've gotten locked out in stairwells before. That's also kind of one of those funny things that you can find yourself in trouble. But when you're doing this, you need to bring all the tools with you. You might need disguises. You might need breaching tools. You might need card cloning devices. You might have a bug, like a man-in-the-middle device, or a network tap that the client wants you to use, or something else, or that your team wants you to use. You're gonna have a lot of stuff. And oftentimes what I do is I use like a shoulder bag. So like a shoulder bag, and it's full of breaching tools. It's full of stuff. But it also has to have enough room so that if you're stealing stuff, you can put stuff in there. So this is where a teammate, I wrote recently on my Substack about like all the personnel that be on a team. And one of the team members is called the mule. The mule's job, he's usually the most inexperienced person, he's learning, but the mule's job is to drop off or pick up personnel and equipment. So if I'm on the job site and I'm like, oh man, my card cloning device is broken on me, or I forgot to bring a cross lock pick or something, he can bring it to me, right? Or if I've stolen a whole bunch of documents and I can't walk out with a whole bunch of crap, I can have him come up, I can hand it off to him, he can leave, and then I can continue going and doing whatever I'm going to do. Or we can trade places. If he's not really a mule and he's a different person, I will leave with a huge documents worth of crap, and then he will go in and we'll switch places. But use your team. Use your team to the best of your ability, and things will work out for you much better.
Yeah, I actually have. I read a book about social engineering, and there was an example when they were in the elevator with a woman that was working in the company, and so the person that wrote, yeah, he's a man, and then he had like a young woman with him that looks like an intern or like a fresh employee, and the woman is piercing them with the eyes, like the one that is working there, and they are going up, and she's like, oh, why are they, and then the intern lady says to him, oh boss, how long will the fire inspection take, and how many floors do we have to do because I'm so hungry, and I'm really tired, and I just want it over. And she felt empathetic to the young female, and then let them into like the archive, or like badge them, like so it's like having a good friend with you is I think helpful. Yeah.
Absolutely. So a trick that I've used fairly recently. I've used this many times before because it works really well. If you have enough personnel to have a burner, so a burner teammate is somebody that you purposefully compromise to get another teammate either rapport or into a building or whatever. So kind of like the girl in the red dress who spilled all the documents, that would be a burner teammate, right? She can't come back because everybody remembers her. But there's a trick that I've used before where you have a colleague, so you have a target who you want to elicit information and you want to build rapport with, and you have a colleague, usually female, who sits next to her. Then what you do is you walk up to the target and you engage in the most awkward conversation that you could possibly think. Whatever that is, like you just walk right up to that person and you start just being awkward. And you kind of push the awkwardness a little too far and just a little too long, and then you leave. Then your female teammate starts laughing and looks over at the target and says, I cannot believe you weren't cracking up this whole time, or some derivative of. And now they've built rapport because they lived through this common experience, and they didn't realize that the entire purpose of that awkward conversation was to make these two like each other and get them to start talking and break the ice and stuff. So yeah, absolutely. Like that's, again, if you have the teammates, use them. You like come up with really fun, clever tricks to whether it's elicitation, social engineering, whatever. You have teammates, use them.
Yeah, that's really smart actually. So I saw on your LinkedIn page that you mentioned a podcast.
Yes.
Can you say something more?
Yeah. So for several months now, I have been flirting with the idea of starting up a podcast on physical security. I now, having done this for almost 20 years, I have a lot of contacts in shipping, in maritime, in the pilots, in air traffic control, in police, and all kinds of stuff. And I thought that it would be really interesting to bring them on and just basically talk about, like, look, what are the physical security issues that you see? What is what are you seeing? What threats are you seeing? What works? What stories have you heard? Basically exactly what you're doing, like this. I mean, what you're doing is I know this is like a stream. I don't really know what the difference is between a stream and a podcast. They're kind of the same thing, but yeah, kind of very similar to what we're doing right now. And I've wanted to do it, but man, I've just been really busy with tons of stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like, next week I'm going to do it. And then I get, an assignment or something, and I just keep putting it off. And humorously, and this just goes to, some OCD type stuff, but I really wanted a good intro song, because it's like, like you should have a song. And I couldn't figure out, like, okay, I need a song or something, and I couldn't find one. And so I kept putting it off because I couldn't find anything to do it. And I was like, But yeah, eventually I would like to have a podcast where I basically just discuss kind of what we're discussing now, just security matters and fun, stupid stories, and, bring other pen testers on and people who are trying to get into pen testing, and, everybody from every aspect of this.
Yeah, I would definitely watch that or listen, whatever the form will be. It sounds super interesting. If you have anything else to share about Cover Access, then go ahead because the rest of my questions are like pretty relaxed and like not really connected to that
Ah,
anymore.
I mean, it's, Covert Access Team. It's really just I still do cyber pen tests, but the vast majority of what I'm doing these days is physical pen tests or physical audits or training. So I'm either training people on various skill sets, or I'm running an engagement or some type of an audit, and there's a lot of that. It's a lot. I do a lot of private training. So corporations or companies, they'll come in and they'll be like, hey, we want you to teach our sales department all about eliciting information, because that would be good to know, right? Like, how do you build rapport with somebody? How do you rapidly build rapport with somebody? How do you spot people's needs? How do you, all that kind of stuff. Could you teach our pen testers this or that? And I do that a lot. So I on my website, I have certain dates and certain times. It's like, oh, we're going to have this class, but there's a lot of private instruction that I end up doing. And I have certain organizations that I have kind of partnered with that I repeat over and over and over again. Like when these people have new recruits or other things, they're like, hey, we want you to do this class or that class. And I just kind of on a rotated basis do that. So there's a lot of things that aren't open to the public that I just end up just doing. But one day I'm going to have a podcast, and one day I will. And by the way, when I do, I'm going to hit you up for all kinds of questions, because you by that time you will have all the answers on how to do all this. But yeah, and then so if anybody's interested in training or assessments or how to get into this or whatever, I mean, I'm always happy to help people out. So if you want to just hit me up in LinkedIn or email or whatever, or I had a group of guys in Dubai recently who were like, hey, we can't come to Europe, but could we do like a private instruction over Zoom? And I was like, yeah, we could try. We could give it a shot. And I just spent a few days with them, just like kind of helping to train and giving as much information and knowledge as I could. So, I mean, it's anything like this, but I'm always happy to help people out. So
Yeah, I think you are a good person, like a really kind human being. And with the podcasting, actually, the Twitch of mine, I was thinking about that for 3 years and was waiting for like the perfect moment. I think it's like similar to you.
yeah,
When I was just like have my own apartment, like perfect gear, like perfect I don't know, camera, and we'll find the perfect song, and
yeah,
similar like you. But then
exactly.
I figure out, yeah, now I'm like have more time on my hands, and
Hmm.
I don't really have where to put my creative energy, and there's a lot. So I thought, yeah, I just because I learned that things don't really have to be perfect. You just have to start, and then you will figure out as you go. So I figure out how to find the song. So it's not perfect, but it's like pretty cool, and eye catch ear catching as well. So it's good for me, and I'm learning here. So that's why I'm always also showing that. Yeah, I don't have the best camera. I'm still learning, and like sometimes I have technical difficulties, but I'm here, and I'm really proud of this that I made the step. So, and I will get better every time that I'm here. So I just like my advice to you is just start and you will just figure it out. And like it would be amazing whatever you will do. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, and that's honestly that's very good advice. So I really appreciate your advice. And every person who is responding to you on LinkedIn and who's on your stream, they're here to hear and see you. So you are a success. I mean, you're doing a very good job with this.
Thank you.
So yeah, you should be proud.
Yeah, it's like my imposter syndrome is still there. It's not totally gone, so it's sometimes it's kicking my butt a bit, but I'm just trying my best and trying to show people that I'm here to share knowledge and to learn. So and also like yeah, so I hope that comes true. And there's a question in the chat. Do you have a bunch of suits to enter building, delivery guy, etc.?
I have a lot of equipment, and that part of that equipment is a lot of clothes. So I have a lot of outfits. I have a lot of disguises. I have a lot of wigs. I have a lot of like you said, like the shirts and the jackets of this company or that company. So yes, I absolutely do. And it's this is one of the reasons why I hate moving all the time, because the amount of equipment I have for training purposes and then engagements and everything else, it's like I need to move it like a big moving truck to whenever I move. So, but yes, I do have a lot of equipment, and that is something for all of your listeners. I highly, highly, highly encourage this. If you are going to be getting into the physical pen testing space, think about the area of operation, like the geographic area that you are likely to engage in, whether that's Poland or the UK or the US or wherever. Figure out what are the most common locks, what are the most common alarm systems, what are the most common security cameras. Figure all of those things out. What are the most common delivery companies? Figure all of that out. Figure out if you can get get your hands on as much of that as you can and start practicing. Start figuring out like, oh, well, if I take this security camera and as long as I cover the lens within 1 second, the motion detection alert doesn't go off. It's like, well, that's good to know, right? Or this particular security camera, have you ever seen those bubble cameras? So you have like a traditional security camera, but then you'll also have like cameras that are like inside of a bubble. Like you have like it's almost like a dome camera. And something that a lot of people don't realize is that those cameras can actually, in certain lighting conditions from the sun, can actually blind the camera, like around, like if the sun is shining on them in the right angle because of the way that the bubble is working. And a lot of people wouldn't know that unless you tested it. But it's like, okay, but think about that. So if you have a bubble camera and you test it out and you realize, oh, if the sun is anywhere in this vicinity to the bubble camera of where it's facing, you cannot see anything in the camera. Like it's literally just a white, background. It's like, that's really good information to know. So I highly recommend that if you're wanting to get into this, try and purchase as much of the equipment that's in your area as possible to practice with it, learn on it, and everything else, because it'll be very, very helpful if you already know how to disassemble a card reader or how to manipulate a locking system or a camera or an alarm. If you already know all that, rather than have to figure it out on the job site.
Thank you. So the next question is, but I think I have to reword it. So the question I have is, how did you get started in cybersecurity field, and what advice would you give to a beginner pursuing a career in cybersecurity? But
Sure.
you can also like answer in like a physical pen testing kind of area, or both.
Yeah, sure. So with cybersecurity, the way that I got started off was I was doing mathematics. So I was really I was that stupid nerd who really liked math and physics, and I was all in on all that stuff. I had a professor who told me, look, I'm good at math, but unless you want to go get a PhD, you will not be doing math for a job. You will be like, you just won't. And he was right. If you want to do math, you have to go get a PhD to do something like actually relevant, unless you're going to do something you really hate. Like, oh, I'm going to do statistics, or I'm going to do accounting, or not. That's not disparaging accountants. It's not disparaging any of that, but it's definitely not what I would enjoy. And so from there, I went on to get another degree in cybersecurity, or sorry, computer science rather. And in computer science, then I went on to get my master's degree in computer science with a focus on artificial intelligence, which I never use. And humorously, I got my degree in artificial intelligence right before like the big AI kickoff happened. So now a lot of the crap that I used to do is kind of irrelevant. Although I'm still very proud of my thesis on that. But basically, I just got a job. I got a 4-year degree in computer science and math, and I just started doing side projects, and I just went for a job. And my professor happened to know a government organization that in the U.S. that needed somebody who was good at math and good at computer science and wouldn't mind doing a really, really complicated physics-esque research program in a functional language like Haskell, which if anybody's used functional languages, you probably want to kill yourself if they really suck. But I still like, this is literally like 20 years ago, and I'm still like regretting it. It's like, oh my God, like I still like, oh man, that assignment was terrible. But that's kind of just how I started, and I really enjoyed it. But my advice to getting into cybersecurity is, first things first, figure out what you want to do. cybersecurity is a big catch-all. There's incident response, there's the defending side of things, there's the pen testing side of things, there's investigations, there's all kinds of fields, right? So figure out what you enjoy doing, like what you really like, what you're passionate about, and then just start going towards that. Develop skills, get certifications, get an internship. Like, I know a lot of people, they don't like internships. Like, oh, you're making very little. Yes, yeah, that's true. But you get experience, because the biggest thing that you're going to run into is you need experience to get a job. But how do you do that? Because you need a job to get experience, right? There's this catch 22. So if you can get an internship somewhere, do it. That's my advice. And if you can't get an internship, then start banging away at your own personal projects and make a footprint on the internet, whether that's Twitch, whether that's YouTube, whether that's GitHub, whether that's any other platform. Just make a footprint for yourself, make yourself known, and just start doing that and start networking as much as you can. So those would be my advice.
Yeah, I think those are like a very good advice. And the being not noticed on LinkedIn is like a kind of like a funny thing that I notice as well, that everyone looks the same, so that's why the red cape. But and it's like funny that you now have to be an influencer, build your personal brand to just get hired. So it's funny times that we live in. Okay, so what qualities do you believe all highly successful cybersecurity professionals share? And before that, there's a question in the chat because I might forget. Do you wear wigs? And will you wear wigs? Are wigs in the picture?
I do. So yes, I do wear wigs. I have lots of wigs. I'm not going to put it on, but I have many wigs. When you are doing engagements, it's really important, especially if your team is small, to be able to change your outfits and basically change your silhouette. Okay, so if I come across as a short, strong, well-cropped male, and I need to immediately change who I look like, then I don't want to look like those things. So the male thing is a little difficult to get away, especially with the beard, but everything else. So, okay, instead of brown hair, blonde hair. Instead of really fit, maybe put on a puffy jacket. So you don't have like that V taper thing going. You have more of like a puffy jacket. If you have a fat suit, so you can take like rolled up clothes and put them under a baggy shirt, and then put a shirt on top of that, and it looks like you have a gut. Just anything like that. When you put on wigs, first things first, experiment with wigs, because it is really hit and miss. I've had more success with female wigs than male wigs, because female wigs, they tend to care more about quality, and male wigs are just kind of like, they exist. But when you're doing wigs, put a wig on and put like a baseball cap or sunglasses or other things, and you can very quickly just alter who you look like. And that's really all that matters. You just want to be able to go from persona A to persona B and do it quick in some situations. So long story short, yes, I do wear wigs often.
Yeah, and so the successful qualities.
Right. So, okay, so the successful qualities. Now, there are a few things that in my opinion, everybody has to have. One, you have to be a hard worker. Okay, I know that sucks, because we all want to be lazy and we all want to sit on the couch watching Netflix and be comfy. But if you want to be successful, you have to do what Dorota is doing right now. Okay, so she is, seriously, like there's nothing that made you do this podcast or stream or whatever. There's nothing that's making you do these things. You are choosing to go above and beyond to do this, even if you have very little time. So, if you're working a 9-to-5 job, and then on top of that, you run your own podcast, or like you go off to get a certification or other things, you are going above and beyond what is expected of you. Think of it like, and I'm going to go back to my math roots here. Think of it like the derivative, right? If you, I need to turn a light on in here. If you are just doing a 9-to-5, you will increase, your skills will increase, your network will increase, everything will increase, but it's going to increase marginally. But if you go to that 9-to-5 and you show up an hour early and you stay an hour late and you're working on side projects and you're pulling a podcast, your derivative, how much you're increasing, how many people you're meeting, how many people notice you, it goes up way faster, and your career will get propelled much, much faster than it otherwise would have. So to be successful in any, like, I highly recommend just be a hard worker, go above and beyond. It doesn't even matter if what you do is succeeds, because everybody fails. I failed. Everybody screws up. Everybody fails. It's just a learning experience. But as long as you're trying, as long as you're putting it out there and you're trying to succeed, you will go somewhere. Like in our environment, in our world, if you push, if you really go after it, you will succeed. It's basically just that simple. The next thing that I would say is you have to have people skills. Okay, I know that in the cybersecurity realm, it's kind of nerdy and it's kind of, introspective and it's kind of a loner thing, but you have to have people skills. Okay, you cannot be that person who is a master hacker, but you can't talk to a human being to save your life. It will not work. You have to have those soft skills. And if you want to get into physical pen testing, you definitely have to have soft skills, because you're going to have to talk to people and elicit information out of them and all kinds of stuff. So yes, you do need, at a minimum, you need these two things. Everything else is just, you have to have, in my opinion, the last thing that I would say is discipline. You have to have the discipline to say, okay, I don't want to study today, but man, I have to, right? Or I don't want to do this thing today, but I just got to do it. You will feel better for having done it. You will feel like, look, so you said, Dorota, that you were studying for the OSCP. And by the time it was over, you were so burnt out, you're like, oh, I never want to see a computer again. But you had to have discipline to push yourself there. You had to get up every single day. And you didn't just wake up one day, or let me say it this way. You didn't go, I love hacking, I love hacking, I love hacking. And then one day comes and you're like, nope, I hate it now. No, you got burned out slowly over time because you pushed yourself and pushed yourself and pushed yourself. And you need that discipline. But this other side of discipline is you have to know how to relax. You have to know when to take a time. You have to know when to step away for a minute and just be like, all right, now is the time to enjoy life, smell the roses, enjoy my significant other if you have one, do whatever it is that you're going to do to relax and have a good work-life balance. But all of these things are really important. I can't say, like, if you are a master of using Burp Suite, that's not really going to help you for incident response. If you are a master social engineer, that's not really going to help you with web app pen testing. So there isn't really a technical skill that I could say every pen tester should have. But these things, have some soft skills, have a drive to do better and be better, and discipline to actually do it, know how to know when and how for you personally, when you need to step away so you don't get burned out, and you need to take a little bit of vacation. Know when those things are, know yourself. But those are the kinds of things I would say. But I don't know if that actually helps you, because I don't know if those were the kinds of questions you were looking for.
Yeah, it's actually good. And why I got burned out, is because I was pushing myself from like early morning till like 10 p.m. every day for a year. And then in the meantime, my cat died. And when I'm learning for an exam, I have this thing from, I don't know, my childhood, that I feel guilty when I'm having fun. Before I do the important thing, like learn for an exam or pass the exam, so I wasn't really letting myself to have fun, because I then felt guilty. So I didn't play World of Warcraft. I didn't watch my favorite TV shows.
Sure.
I was rarely going cycling. So it all accumulated into a mess. And now I know better. So, and I have a question for you. If you want to put your light.
Yeah, give me 1 sec to turn the light on.
So I will change the screen to a Patreon. Thank you. I have 2 people that are supporting me, but if anyone else wants to, then this is the link to support me on Patreon. And I wanted to thank you for the supporters that I have now, to King Crowley and Ghostface Killer. As I promised, there's like a special thank you on every Twitch. So okay, let's get back to Brian. We are in the light now. Okay, so I have a few more questions. It's almost like 3 hours here, so I will not keep you any longer. What is your favorite hacker movie? I always ask this because I like movies, but yeah.
Sure. Wow. Favorite hacker movie. Okay. So it's probably not going to be something that you anticipate. My favorite hacking movie would be the movie Spy Game. Not because there's any cyber pen testing, but because there's a scene in that movie where Robert Redford is training Brad Pitt how to social engineer people. And he's training him. And there's a scene in that movie where Brad Pitt says, he asks something about like, what gadgets or things do you use? And Robert Redford's character responds and he says, in most situations, all you need is a pocket knife, a stick of gum, and a smile. And it's a really good that training montage between Robert Redford and Brad Pitt, and Robert Redford's character. They're, I believe, in Munich, and he says, "Do you know anybody who lives in that building, in that apartment complex?" And Brad Pitt's character says, "No, I don't." And Robert Redford says, "Within 5 minutes, I want to see you standing in one of those balconies." And it was like that type of thing. Like I love that, like that's what yeah, that's a really interesting, training exercise, but it is fun.
Thank you. That's a really good. I don't think I saw that movie actually, but I think I will now. Okay, so what is a life hack that you like to share that doesn't really connect with cybersecurity? I don't know how you wash your potatoes. I don't know.
Okay. Ooh, that's an interesting question. A life hack that I have. Yeah, that's a good question. You might have stumped me with that question. I'm thinking of something that I do that.
It's a curveball question.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a life hack, but it makes my life really easy. I tend to eat a lot of fish. I always have. When I was younger, I used to go hunting and fishing all the time. And so being able to just take a can of tuna or a can of salmon and just eat it is really, really handy, especially on engagements. But I can remember this isn't really a life hack. I just think it's a funny story. There was a time where I was going to be doing a long range, like a long-term surveillance, and I was going to be sitting in a van for like a week. And so I went to the grocery store and I bought like cases of tuna. And the woman goes, "Oh, you must have a lot of cats." And I was like, yes, I do. And I just didn't want to correct her. But a life hack. I'm gonna have to think about that because I can't think of any life hack that I have. I'm pretty normal, I think. Okay. One thing that I don't know if this is a life hack or not, but because I travel so much over the years to stay in shape, I've had to figure out how to exercise without a gym. And I actually have not gone to a proper gym in about 4 years. And I've had to figure out ways of exercising with absolutely nothing. So yeah, finding really weird ways of exercising. So it's kind of fun.
You helped me to come out with like my hack that I would like to share. I'm actually packing for Copenhagen, so because I usually take very small suitcase or backpack, then I pack every hygienical like shampoo into very very tiny containers
Sure.
to make them super small and then light. And so I'm trying to pack in a way that is light, and if I'm wearing a backpack all day, then like my back doesn't hurt. So I don't know
Very
if
nice.
that's like a life hack, but yeah. So my
I
idea
can
of packing is like tiny and like yeah.
No, that's smart. Like pack as little as you need. That's really really smart and have it. You were talking about packing, and it's not a life hack, but it's a professional thing that I do. Um, I've been pulled off into the TSA many times because when I go into a country and I have a checked bag full of like breaching tools and disguises and wigs and all kinds of stuff, it gets suspicious. So I've many times had to like have a meeting with the TSA and be like, "Here's why I am. So I started taking a copy of my get out of jail letter and a copy of my resume and just putting it in my suitcase. So like if the TSA ever opens it to look at like whatever the hell's in there, it's literally a copy of the get out of jail letter and a copy of my resume and maybe a business card and be like, yes, it's legitimate, it's fine. And maybe it's coincidence, but I haven't had that happen to me in the last like 2 years since I've been doing that. So
Yeah, it's a charm to have in your suitcase, I guess,
maybe.
to not go into like problems and bad situations. Okay, so I have two questions that are like connected. You don't have to answer the first one if you don't want
Okay.
to. So, what is your biggest mistake you've ever made, and how did you recover from it? And the follow-up is, what do you feel was your biggest win in life?
Ooh, okay. So for the first question, when you say biggest mistake, do you mean in life or do you mean like pen testing?
You can choose. I don't really want to go like into very personal thing if you don't want to share it, but whatever you like to share.
Okay, so in life, I don't really believe in mistakes because I believe that as long as you learn from whatever it is that you did, and as long as you aren't, um, as long as you are a good person and you don't do something maliciously to hurt somebody or do whatever, then there really isn't a mistake. You made a choice based on what you believed at the time to be the best course of action for something, and it turned out not to be so. Hopefully you have learned from that. And if you need to, you have offered a sincere apology to anybody that might warrant said apology. Um, but aside from that, I don't, I mean, there are things that I wish that I would have done differently, but if I had have done them differently, then I wouldn't be the person where I am, who I am, and I wouldn't be where I am. So it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, I'm happy with where I am. I'm happy with who I am. And all of those stupid things that I've done over the course of my life got me to this point. So yeah, maybe that's a stupid answer, but
No, it's a very
um,
good answer.
and as far like I can give you a funny pen testing story where I screwed up. The So there was an instance where we were trying to get into the second to the top floor of a very tall building, and it was in an environment where we couldn't get an angle to see into the building, and drones were not allowed, so you couldn't fly a drone inside the city. And what we noticed that there was a European tilt window that was opened every evening. And for anybody who doesn't know it, Europeans have these windows where inside there's a handle, and if you put the handle all the way to the up, the window tilts open this way. And then if you pull the window in and tilt it halfway down, then the window opens all the way out. And so there are tools that you can use from the outside to flip that handle from the up position to the side position, so you can pull the window open. So if somebody left the window like in this position and you're on the outside, there's tools that you can use to close the window, turn the handle, and then open the window. And so that was the plan. The plan was, okay, it's a very tall building. But it's a very tall building, but we could get to the catwalk, the fire escape. So we could go to the fire escape, get all the way to the top, and then we could go over to where this window was. And we found something on the roof of the building so we could rappel down, and we found a good anchor point. We could rappel down and do this. But I was a little overconfident, and knowing Europeans, I didn't expect anybody to be working at 10 p.m. It is not, in my experience, it is not common to have a European person in the office at their desk at 10 p.m. So I didn't even bother really checking. I just assumed window open, lights are off, it must be empty. And we were going to go up the fire escape, use the anchor point, rappel down. I'm the guy rappelling down, and I get over the window, and I remember thinking, I should at least look inside. So I kind of leaned over and I glanced inside, and with his back turned towards me is a guy at his laptop. And he's maybe, 10 feet, 15 feet away from me with his back turned towards me. And I'm just sitting there, and I kind of here's the other stupid thing that I did. I didn't bring an auto ascender or any tool to get me back up other than just, hand over hand, because I didn't anticipate it. I didn't anticipate needing to. So, when you're rappelling, if you're in the L position, which, your feet are kind of like this and your body's kind of like this, right? So you're in the L position. As long as you have your brake hand on, you're not really exuding energy. You're just kind of sitting there. And so I'm just kind of sitting there on the wall or on the side of the building. And I'm like, he's got to leave any minute now. And I was sitting there for half an hour. For half an hour, I sat there. And I was just kind of like very quietly talking to my team. And I was like, dude, he's still there. He's still there. And that was just kind of a funny screw up. But it was definitely something that I remember it. But yeah, so. I'm sorry. And what was your other question?
And how did you recover from it?
Oh, slap my own wrist and make sure that I do a bunch of checks before I go into things and not do that again.
And the other question was what do you feel was your biggest win in life?
So As weird as it sounds, I think that honestly, my biggest win in life was probably meeting my wife. So it's one of those things that it's very cliche to say, but you know, I really love my wife and we get along really well. And it, having somebody in your life who supports you and who is there for you and who you can rely on 100% really makes all the difference. Because if you're having a horrible day or horrible week or bad news or something else, that person will pick you up. That person will support you, you know, and and you do the same for her. And it's just, it's so helpful and it's so comforting to have that. So I've done a lot of things in my life that I was proud of. I've done a lot of things in my life that I feel are good accomplishments, but having a loving and supporting spouse is something that would be the one thing that I would say that's not, I would not trade that in. If I had to trade in and like, okay, well, I'll give up this memory or I'll give up this experience or whatever, having somebody by your side who will support you and care about you is definitely, that's something that I definitely do not ever want to give up.
Yeah, that's like a treasure to have a person like that. Yeah.
Yep.
So the people in the chat wants to know about your favorite food.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love steak. I love fish, salmon specifically. Sushi is amazing. I lived in Japan for a little while, and I'm pretty sure that if carbs really do make you fat, I would be a 300-pound sumo wrestler if I lived in Japan, because sushi is just the best. It is. I would probably say that as a delicacy, sushi is amazing. That said, as far as delicacy, like legitimate delicacies go, strawberry shortcake is probably my favorite dessert. I don't know why, just always has been. But yeah, so I really love salmon. I love steak for foods, but yeah, there's, oh my man, it's one of those things that when you have a good, like, okay, I'll say it this way. I have a close friend of mine who, when he got married, he decided to have his wedding reception at a sushi bar. I legitimately think that I probably cost him $300 or $400 because I ate so much sushi that night. I don't think I've ever eaten more food than I ate that night, because it was all I could eat, and I was just gorging on it like a pig. But yeah,
I would probably do the same.
Yeah, it's amazing.
My favorite dish is ramen, so it's like same like, and I was married to a sushi chef for a while, so that was a win. But yeah,
That's a win-lose. When you are married to somebody or with somebody who is an amazing cook, oh man, like that's a win-loss, because it's like if they start just making you all kinds of food, you don't want to stop eating. It's just like, yes,
bring it in.
yes, bring it in, don't stop. Yeah, yeah. But ramen is also delicious. Ramen is very, very tasty.
It's really it's a dish that warms my heart. So I went through a heartbreak in the previous year, so I just healed myself with ramen. So now I'm all good. Okay.
Hey, if
works.
it works, it works.
Okay, you opened a company on your own, so maybe that's a question that you could also maybe answer. What is your advice for career success when it comes to getting hired, climbing the corporate ladder,
Yes.
or starting a company in cybersecurity?
Okay, so very good question. So whatever it is that you do, whether it's, I'm assuming that everybody in the audience is probably in some way, shape, or form cybersecurity, or some form of security. As you go through life, your skill set is going to improve, your knowledge base is going to improve, and those skills will translate to more pay. However, it will not be, okay, let me say it this way. When you climb the corporate ladder, there are two schools of thought. You can stay loyal to your company, but if you do stay loyal to your company, they have to stay loyal to you. Companies have this really, really annoying tendency of wanting you to treat them like family, where you're like, oh, I will live and die by my loyalty to the company, but they will fire you at the drop of a hat if it benefits them. So think of it this way. Any company that says we treat our employees like family, okay, would you ever fire your sister or your brother or your father or something? It's like, no, of course you wouldn't. I mean, and that's the thing, is that they want abject loyalty from you, but there's no loyalty the other way. So if they are not giving you raises and regular, kind of promotions and other things that you deserve. Now, if you are a lazy person and you are doing the bare minimum, okay, fine, you're not getting promoted anytime soon, fine. But if you are doing what you are supposed to, and you should be getting raises every single year, and you should be getting promotions whenever you're supposed to get promotions. If you are not, then yeah, absolutely, there's no harm, no foul in looking for another company that will give that to you. Because here's the thing. So when you take the cost of living into account, you are probably not going to be making enough money at most companies to retire. So at the end of the day, you're probably not going to be able to be paid enough to where you're making so much money that you will be able to retire on. So I will back up and I will say this. The ultimate goal of capitalism is to be your own boss. Now it's hard, it's stressful. Do not think, as somebody who opened my own company and who runs it and it's fairly successful, do not think that if you open your own company, it's like, aha, I'm my own boss, and that means that I can work whenever I want. No. That's not what that means. When you open your own company, if you're serious about it, you will be working 80 hours a week for the first year or two, because you are now everybody. You are the sales department. You are the quality assurance people. You are the delivery guy. You're everybody, and you have to be everybody. So you usurp so many roles and so many responsibilities that if you actually want your business to succeed, you have to do this. But I really encourage everybody to at least consider opening their own company and opening their own business. And don't do that right away. If you're 18 years old or 20 years old and you're right out of college, maybe the entrepreneurship thing is not for you just yet. Maybe you should network and develop skills and things like that first. Not saying that you can't, because I have heard of some 20-year-olds who are like now multimillionaires, so what do I know? But I would encourage you to go to companies that treat you well, where you have a good work-life balance and you are paid what you think you should be paid. And if that is not the case, do not hesitate to start looking for another company that will pay you and give you what you want. But the ultimate goal, in my opinion, will be to open your own company and take those skill sets that you have developed and be your own boss. Because the first few years of being an entrepreneur suck, because you are going to be busy, you're going to be stressful. You might, January, February, March, April, all come and go, and you haven't made a dime. But then, July comes around and you make, $50,000, $100,000 or something on some big assignment or big sale. And you're like, wow, so it's stressful in different ways. It's a very stressful thing, but for very different reasons. But I will tell you that your business will do better if you have the more relationships that you have. So if you are going into cybersecurity and you want to be a cybersecurity person, if you've already developed really good close relationships with this company and this company and this company and this company, and then when you open up your own company, they're like, oh my gosh, that person that we absolutely loved started their own company, we're going with you, right? Now, of course, there's NDAs and non-competes and stuff, and that's a whole different issue, but that's basically my advice.
That's a very good advice. And with the loyalty thing, I wanted to share part of my story. So
Sure,
my
please.
first job was for a local government in Eastern Poland. My mother told me when I was younger that if you work hard, then you will succeed. And so I listened to her. It's a good advice, but maybe not in every environment. So I did work for like 3 people. I volunteered for tasks, and then year 6, and I'm still not promoted. I didn't get any raises, so I felt like a fool there. So I felt used there. And that kind of healed me from, because I'm extremely loyal, and it kind of healed me from extreme loyalty. I'm loyal, but like to extent. And if I'm not getting anything in return, then yeah, okay, I'm moving on, and they will pay me more if I would be waiting for a raise in this company. So yeah, that's my approach. Maybe I'm shooting in my own knee here, sharing it on a stream because I'm looking for a job actually. But yeah, if it's not a give and take, then yeah, it's a no-go actually. It's a bad environment.
Absolutely. And your job interview should be a two-way interview. You know, when they're interviewing you, you should be interviewing them back and making sure, like, is this a person or a company that I want to work with? You know, if you're talking to the interviewer and you say, "I'm sorry, could you ask that question again? I didn't quite get it," and their response to you is no, or "You should know this," it's like, oh, okay, I kind of
Well,
see where we're at here.
yeah,
It's, you know,
game over.
yeah, you be interviewing them when they're interviewing you. You know, yeah. Do as much networking as you possibly can because it will help you. Every week, every other week, I would reach out to every single person in my sphere and I would ask them, "How's it going? And is there anything that I could do to help you out?" And what I mean by that, it's not just the people on my team. It means I would reach out to the project managers. I would reach out to the sales guys. I would reach out to the pre-sales guys. I would reach out to my boss. I would reach out to anybody that was in my sphere of influence every single week or every other week. And I would just say, "Hey man, I'm just checking in. How are you doing? Is there anything you need from me? Is there anything I can do to help you out?" Because you never know. Like the sales guy might be saying like, "Oh man, you know, there's this, I've been banging my head on, you know, the sale and I can't make it happen." And then you talk to him for 20 minutes and you're like, and you come to some idea, or you give him an idea, and then bam, he makes a big sale. His life is way better and your life is way better because when the company makes money, you don't get fired. But a lot of those relationships, because I regularly inquired into people like, "Hey, can I help you out? Can I do anything? Be empathetic." I still have a lot of those relationships. I left NCC Group years ago, but I still have a lot of those relationships with people, and they're very good relationships because you reach out, because you help people, because you're nice to them, and it goes both ways. You know, if you need something down the road, you have more contacts, you have more people, you have people who will help you out. So network as much as possible. But don't go into it thinking like, haha, how can I manipulate or use this person? But just go into it thinking, can I help you out today? You
Yeah.
know, it's, yeah.
So just be empathetic. Yeah, I actually am a person that always is always nice. And like in the previous company, I was called the glue that holds the team together because I like naturally remember everyone's birthday and was trying to. It was a Dutch team, so they they didn't celebrate it in a way that maybe a Polish person would or American. So I and like the environment felt a bit cold to me because I'm like very open and very happy. But with my input into the environment, they like opened up and like really liked me, and so they really liked the little like I don't know cards or like that I remember about them. So I still am friends with a lot of the people that I work with then. And
Sure.
for me, like on the side is like the best job that I ever had because my manager was like super helpful and like yeah, super like kind. Okay. So
That's good. That's great.
and also like I wanted to actually say about being kind. So you
Mhm.
never know what the person is going through. People don't remember or like your position or who you are, but they
Mhm.
remember how you made them feel. So they
Yeah.
feel like, oh, I remember her because she was nice to me when I had like a bad day or something.
Yeah.
So that's my like I'm trying to share like be kind and like on LinkedIn and like I call myself like in the slide about myself an ambassador of kindness because that's what I'm trying to share that cybersecurity is a super difficult field and
Mhm.
if we are like being I don't know, grumpy to each other. It doesn't help actually. If you're nice, then it makes the task that you're like really struggling with a bit easier. So yeah, I just wanted to say that at the end. And super thank you for being here. And you're actually the first guest that stayed with me for 3 hours, and uh, and
It
I'm
was,
super honored that you said yes to the invitation and you came
uh,
here
it,
because, yeah,
it was my pleasure. I'm the one who feels honored to be on your podcast. So thank you for having me.
oh, So yeah, so we are both happy, and I rate this stream 10 out of 10 so far. So okay, there's a lot of thank yous in the chat. Thank you again from me, and bye, and see you on Monday.
All right. I'll see you on Monday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.